Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Fanfiction podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. Today, we're diving into a brand new story, True Terror in the World of Heroism Part 9 by HYPN0S. Before we jump in, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. Prologue Hack 2. Evolution Prologue. Mother send her regards October 28th, Island. Come on, Melissa Shield muttered to herself, eyes glancing at a container in the middle of the room, currently empty, placed on a pedestal. But Melissa knew better. This wasn't a pedestal, it was a device that would funnel her latest experiment into the container, seal it at vacuum for easy transportation and studies. Glancing at a computer screen nearby, Melissa nearly jumped in glee when she saw the results of the compound creation. A 100% chance of bonding with the user without issues and being unable to co-opt the user's nervous system, as it was feared when she first brought it up. Michael and Cora, bless them, had the same concerns but had trusted her because she would not do anything as dangerous as the thing she created with fail-safes. Her attention was brought to the device as it hummed into life, and it began to funnel her creation out of the forge it had been for the past month while being programmed and worked on. A storm of red and black suddenly emerged into the container, like a sandstorm, swirling with a life of its own. Each grain she saw in the container filled her with pride. Then the process was done. The container was sealed immediately. Then Melissa went to one of the consoles and began to insert the final commands onto the swarm inside the container, adding the final failsafe protocol and kill switch if necessary. She waited for 5 more minutes until the download was done, and there she smiled. She gingerly walked to the container. Now the swarm within was docile, each grain lazily moving around. She smiled at this, knowing that the reason she could see the grains was that each one was composed of an untold number of smaller, way smaller machines that on command would and could become something great. The culmination of both nanotechnology and micro and hopefully macro construction and micro-healing machines. She had made Siva. And yes, she still doesn't know what Siva stands for aside from being a reference to an old god of destruction. Not an exactly befitting name to something she created with the purpose of creation and improvement, but she would be stupid to say that humans haven't turned benign things into dangerous weapons. This, of course, was just step 1. Right now, Siva was just step 1 for something even greater, a self-replicating machine capable of creating anything imaginable, from clothes to construction material, to even construct things. The possibilities were endless. But it lacked something. Melissa went to a small container. This one opened upon approaching, and began to let out cold steam as Melissa reached for a vial that was being pushed onwards, lifting it up to eyesight. Melissa gulped. This was the closest any person even had to distill and separate a quirk secondary effect from a person. In this case, Hax's ability to cause seamless bonding without issues. This was required for Siva to work inside people. Machines inside people just don't happen unless drugs are involved. The body will simply try to purge the foreign substance by any means. But with this, she thought, the possibilities to operate from within, without the need of invasive incisions, to be able to operate with unnatural precision, something even in this age of quirks was still hard to do. Approaching the container of Siva, Melissa placed the vial on the top of the container, a small slot opening. She placed the vial there, letting its contents empty on the vacuum-sealed container, then closing. Immediately the screens began to flare with life. Information provided by the nanits themselves began to fill Melissa with hope. Then it happened. Bonding process successful, agent assimilated, yes. She jumped in joy. Rushing to the console, she began to trace over the new data it was being fed to her right now. Her smile couldn't become wider at the moment she read the data relayed to her. This changes everything, she uttered. Siva could easily and seamlessly unite 2 quirks into one without affecting the body and causing a cascade scenario in the process. I'll need more testing, but with this we can bypass one for all lethality to quirked individuals. But that's so basic compared to what could be achieved. Seamless integration of organs or skin grafts in the matter of hours instead of days or weeks. Operations that are dangerous can be carried out without issue. Creation of newer material to a molecular level on a Siva forge. Miniaturization of industries and forges. The decrease of pollution. The reuse of hazardous materials for the benefit of all. I created a wonder, she uttered in awe. Despacito, call Papa. Tell him it's done. Siva is complete, she said, seeing the affirmation of the AI system. Easily she made her way towards the container and lifted it with her hands. It weighed almost nothing, despite that she held it as if it was made of the most precious and fragile material the world had ever conceived. You are going to change everything. Melissa uttered to the nanits contained in the glass. She didn't noted how the interior of the pedestal was glowing in a certain pattern. Today, we made history. Boom. The room was a hazy mess for Melissa. Her back hurt. Her eyes felt unfocused. She idly realized her glasses were gone. No, that was the concussion. Even without the glasses, she is not supposed to see double, just slightly blurry up close. A sharp pressure in her chest made her reach for that spot, only to stop when she felt it. It was warm and liquid. The thing that she touched was surrounded by it, and it was cold to the touch. Looking down, Melissa began to panic, breath coming in swallow intakes that made her acutely aware that she was breathing smoke now. Because right there, right in the middle of her chest, she saw a huge portion of the glass container of Siva, stuck to her chest. She began panicking, the pain now becoming acute and concentrated. Her vision was no longer impaired as she could see the damage to the room, a smoking, burning crater in what used to be the pedestal where the Siva nanits has been funneled into the glass container. Screens were broken and sparking, and to make matters worse, the sprinkler system wasn't working. Wonderful. Her ears, which at one point were ringing, caught the sound of gunfire, shouts, and panicked orders. She also noted that her arms and chest, aside from being coated with blood, her blood, were also covered in glass embedded into her flesh and covered by the Siva nanits. Well, those that made it. Most of them were burnt, which made her angry, only a few, which were very close to her chest, and the glass embedded in her chest were in perfect state. The shouting and gunfire got louder. She couldn't let whoever had made this have Siva. She lifted bother her arms, bringing her S-watch to level, and began to activate commands into it with great pain. Then after a while, it pinged OK to her. Then she brought her S-watch to her mouth. Initiate Panacea Directive, Midnight Exigent Protocol. Gasp, command order. Gasp, priority 5-inch, she uttered. The nanits near her chest lit up with a red glow, each one taking life and fragmenting even further, becoming finer than sand, finer than anything than the eye could catch a simple glance. They hovered over her form for a while, then the small Siva nanits moved into her open wounds. She gasped as the foreign sensation swarmed her senses and overtook the pain she was feeling. She knew this was all an attempt to save her life, and in turn, would ensure no one would get Siva. But it all has its costs. In her case, she would become the only source of Siva and the only place that knew about it. Panacea Directive, a healing directive. Midnight Exigent Protocol, an erase order on every file regarding Siva from the mainframes in Island. Priority 5, bumped every order given to make it a priority. It was done now or now. As her eyes fluttered close, Melissa's last thoughts at the moment were of her father. God, I hope nothing happened to him. Chapter summary. Back in the saddle after the tragedy beheld comes healing. But after such a loss, can you really move on? And if so, are you ready to face this new, hostile new world? Let's find out, shall we? Chapter notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Chapter 1. Back in the saddle 5 hours later. David stared at his daughter through a glass, her form still and hooked to several monitors that kept her vitals in check and visible for the doctors attending her. His visage was morose and sour. He was angry, but not at Melissa, more at himself for not foreseeing this. Nanotechnology had always been a dream for many creators, the ability to create from nothing, using just raw material and whatever your mind would allow you. The closest anyone had gotten were 3D printers, both commercial use, using resin and plastic for small models, or the industrial models, behemoths that were housed in island bowels and could actually print a tank in half an hour down to the last detail, circuit, and metal sheet, as long the material was provided. But pure nanotechnology was something more involved, as it touched several fields. Melissa's full gauntlet was among the first attempts at nanotech being used for heroics, or medicine. Being able to build a cast in seconds instead of hours is a miracle in on itself. He still did not quite believe people when they called his daughter a leader in nanotech, a pioneer. Those labels tend to attract both kinds of attention. What brought the attack was the worst kind of attention, the kind you never want to have. Many people see nanotech as, at best, capable of causing another upheaval, the kind quirks achieved 200 years prior with all the chaos they bring, death, and countries in chaos. Kind of upheaval. At best. At worst, they will bring the apocalypse, enough said. Looking at the sleeping form of his daughter, according to the doctors, David narrowed his eyes. The number of factions that could pull an attack of such kind were limited, like 2 for individual organizations and 3 for nations. First was of course the troop, but the MO did not add up, and they tended to acquire the object in question, not destroy it. Destroying Siva served them no purpose. Then there was the Hummerize cult, an exact opposite of the troop in terms of manpower and ideologies. Hummerize wanted the destruction of quirks, labeling them as the cause of human stagnation and agony, and were firm believers of the quirk singularity theory. Despite not being as dangerous as the troop in terms of manpower and equipment, they were made up of cunning, skill, and hypocrisy because they used the very same quirks they decry against to achieve their goals. Then there were the governments. Only the United States, Russia, and China would have the resources to pull something of this magnitude. Problem was that the three governments could, in fact, not pull something like this and come unscathed. To begin, the assault unit was made of criminals, most of them pulled from several nations, wanted criminals who had nothing to lose and just wanted to go out swinging. They were all dead, of course, because the Eds tore them apart in a hail of bullets before they could reach Melissa. Then there was the matter of the bomb placed in the same room his daughter was in alongside Siva. It indicated an intimacy regarding the project itself, meaning someone on the team had done the deed. The problem was that cameras showed nothing of someone doing something of the sort, which led to a third party wanting to hinder the project or outright kill Melissa to prevent Siva from making it out, or even becoming more polished for safe usage. In the end, something was done. Siva was damaged beyond the point of repair. Melissa, in panic and fear of having a repeat of the marionette episode, had used the Midnight Exigent Protocol to erase every scrap of data regarding Siva, and then used the Panacea Directive to save her life and safeguard the last dregs of Siva. On herself. He knew one day Yagi's recklessness would rub in the wrong way to his daughter, but he never imagined it would be in such a way. But he imagined it could be worse, all things considering. The medics that initially attended her had told him that she should be dead. They had found a massive piece of glass around. Melissa's shirt had an incision near her chest, right where her heart is, in the same shape of the glass shard, and if the blood in it was any indication, it had split her heart in two, mangled it. Added was also the explosion itself. Internal bleeding and organ rupture would be the least of the problems there, considering the shrapnel, the flames, and everything else. Now here she was, laying on a bed because the doctors can't tell what Siva will do to her. He knew that the Panacea Directive, it had been added as a means to show that Siva could be used on the medical field. Nanomachines work within the host to keep it healthy, perform operations that would be high risk if performed by humans, like brain surgeries and open chest operations, ensure organ transplants work at a 100% rate. Even on coma patients that tended to lose muscle mass, the nanobots would help by ensuring the body doesn't lose it, keep it fed well enough for atrophy doesn't cause too much damage. In the case of Melissa, somehow so a heart split in fucking TWO. Not to mention the liquefied liver, the shredded pancreas, the torn kidneys, and the blood-flooded lungs, just to name a few, because if he remembers the full list of her healing injuries when she was first examined by a doctor, he might die, again. Then of course was the thing that saved her, Siva. She had told him that she had named it after a freaking nanotech turned nanovirus driven by an insane AI that killed quasi-immortal warriors because fuck you. You took my son, fuck you, aside from the fact I killed him, fuck you. Yes, those were her words, and her not-so-exact description of Siva. So of course he was kinda off-put by the idea of naming something she created after something that killed something that's freaking immortal. But Melissa did a Melissa and did it anyway because she stated that, unlike the hacks that built Siva in the first place, she isn't consorting with the darkness. She isn't bringing robots from an alternative timeline and harvesting them for parts and making crazy machines, and she doesn't have a statue on her basement whose whispers drive normal men insane. Oh, and also she isn't a cocky asshole, so she put a metric shit ton of fail-safes and 3 kill switches in case Siva got out of hand, somehow. It wasn't tied to a crazy AI named after the man that got poisoned, shot, stabbed, bludgeoned, neutered, tossed into a freezing river, and somehow was still alive, and then set on fire because why not, so they had that going on for them. Still, the fact remained, someone had tried to kill Melissa, someone had sabotaged a highly covert experiment only very few individuals knew about. Someone snuck a strike team and a bomb into Island, bypassed the main defenses, entered the lab, and placed the bomb in the lab where the experiment was going to be held, where Siva was held and Melissa would be. It all screamed of an internal job, of someone from within Island doing the deed. Someone had sent 10 criminals to their deaths and was well aware of this. The concept alone made him sick. Now the real question lingered, even as he walked to a seat nearby and sat heavily, waiting for Yagi to arrive in the last flight to accept people onto the island due to the lockdown. Why? Okako Uraraka lives by a simple code of life. Waste not, want not. She has seen her mom and daddy work themselves to the bone to ensure she had a semi-comfortable life. This, in turn, had ensured that she would do anything in her power, and the law, to lighten the burn they had. Because that is what good girls do, they help people and lift their spirits. She learned how to sew and saved enough money from a meager allowance and whatever odd jobs other people were willing to pay her in order to buy the necessary materials for a sewing kit, threads, needles, even those metal caps to put in your fingers. Using her outdated, but serviceable, cell phone, she saw videos on how to sew, how to fix clothes, and ensure they would last more than expected. She had come to buy clothes 2 sizes bigger and cheap, and then sew them to her size, slowly stretching them as she grew. That was when she was 10. When she was 8, she had used her quirk in ways that might have landed her with annotations for illegal quirk usage. Things like lightening the load of something heavy and transporting it, being paid by kids on the neighborhood to use her quirk and send their toys to space. Small stuff that could earn her enough cash to help her parents, and in turn train her quirk enough for heroics, because that was her aim. Heroics, save lives, put smiles on their faces. Getting paid big fat checks and sending her parents to Hawaii to rest and get tanned and have them being ogled and lusted after by the locals because they deserve a harem for all the shit they had to do in order to raise her and ensure she has a semi-comfortable life. Then, well, what happened before? Her entire body had changed, her quirk had mutated. She now sat a whopping 7 feet tall, with very toned muscles and a quirk that honestly was overpowered now. It scared her, to be perfectly honest. What had happened in the base and then at Hashima had shown her that she wasn't alone in this mess, and when the dust had settled, they had time to cry and mourn and shit. It was quite a sight to see a girl who is supposed to be 14, being as tall as All Might or Endeavor and as muscly as Mako, crying in the massive funeral procession made in Amora High to those who didn't make it. To be honest, she wasn't the only odd sight that day. Her school boasted the highest amount of surviving students everywhere in Japan. A whopping 50% of the total student population had survived the event compared to other schools who only saw a 20% of their student body survive the event. Sumi was not on the list because of the sheer size of it had spared it the worse, only losing students on a single wing, while Aldera had some of the worst survivalist rates in all of Japan. Barely 5% of the total student body had survived the exposure. There were already talks about closing schools, sending the survivors to a single school, completely guarded by heroes and cops and soldiers because every surviving student of the age 11 to 15 had become something different. It was because of these differences and circumstances that when a parcel had arrived at her home just shy a week after the final cleanups that she grew kinda paranoid of it. It helped ease her paranoia that the parcel had come with the name Momo Yaoyorozu as a remittent. When she had opened it, she nearly had lost her shit. Her family struggled, but there were things most families had and needed nowadays. A computer was one of them. Despite the fact her parents' company struggled, a computer was necessary for any company, even one that struggled. Of course, she didn't use it much, as like in most computers in call centers, the computer back home was basically programmed for work. It had no games. The Internet Explorer had most, if not all, pages banned and blocked by a special program, only allowing certain pages to be opened. Only Microsoft Office was installed alongside an app for group chats and meetings online. Most of her time on the net was on her cell phone. So when the parcel turned out to be a laptop with a headset and a camera attached to the frame, she nearly flipped. Part of her wanted to turn the laptop away, seeing it as some sort of backhanded gift. She knew what the name Yaoyorozu meant in the company world. Yaoyorozu was old money, having made their fortune during the dark age of quirks. Where many saw a disaster, the Yaoyorozu saw an opportunity, one they are still reaping benefits from. Many think the HPSC is the seated power in the hero industry in Japan. Barely a handful tended to consider that the idea of a commission to police heroes and ensure they act as one came of the Yaoyorozus, and that the building the HPSC is based on is in fact owned by the Yaoyorozus. Part of her wanted to return the laptop because it would mean getting indebted to a Yaoyorozu. That was the old her. Her new self gently broke the neck of her other self and reminded her that Momo Yaoyorozu was simply too precious to try something so underhanded, that her upbringing maybe limited her friend options a little too much, and this was an attempt to reach someone who could understand her current situation and what she had lived in Hashima Island and the base and the school. Also, the new her reminded her that a laptop was way better to search things and read than trying to do so on the small screen of her flip phone. Waste not, want not. Connecting it to the building's Wi-Fi had been the easy part. The hard part had been explaining why she had a laptop to her parents. The middle kinda hard but not hard thing had been talking with Momo and the girls for over 3 hours straight. Apparently, they had formed a small chat circle 3 days after returning to their homes, or in a more precise way Mina, who had been bored out of her skull and had recurring nightmares that shifted from being eaten alive by a pack of lickers to being dragged into the abysm by a cold-enveloped Izuku, needed someone to talk to that wasn't her parents and understood the situation. Turns out, Tsuyu was in the same situation, but her nightmares were more akin to Izuku becoming death itself and eating the abyss and her as a snack. Okuko still doesn't get it. He's a nice guy. The fabric that holds reality together hums when he passes, and he looks like he needs friends, hugs, and mochi in his life. Eventually, it devolved into a place for them to chat with one another and vent out their frustrations and the fact they can't understand their quirks at all. I mean, I like my new quirk, Mina said over the chat video, her tail lazily waving around as she adjusted herself to be seen better. But sometimes I discover things that make my skin crawl, like. Tsuyu asked while writing something in a notebook. Like, check this shit out. 2 days ago I decided to stab something with it. A rock. To begin with, I mean it is sharp looking, right? Yes, Momo Yororozu said with a beatific smile. It screamed patience never ending. Well, turns out this thing is a pressure valve. The moment it made contact it spread acid like firing out of a canister, spray and the like. The rock melted and right now I'm figuring out what not to touch with my tail because I don't know how sensible this shit is without accidentally melting someone's face off. Yikes, Okuko and the girls chorused. That sounded really bad. Well, I guess we aren't alone in the quirk pains, Okuko muttered, pointing at herself. I didn't notice this before. Because of all the chaos and the crying and stuff, but apparently I can passively generate a negative gravity field. Which kinda explains why I am this, developed, Okuko said with a blush, which was understandable. Mum had to hit Daddy with a frying pan to stop him from buying a shotgun to stop men from looking at her daughter as a piece of meat. On one hand, it's cute for him to act like the overprotective dad she knows he is. On the other hand, fuck, she is eye candy and she's not sure how to feel about it. Oh, how you found out, Kyoka asked, slightly moving her hair from her ears, exposing the extended earlobes with jacks in them. And the slight elf-like ear tips with some fur in them. I can't have a normal bed. I need a futon because when I go to bed I become heavy enough that the frame couldn't take the sudden increase of weight and broke, Okuko said with a pout. Daddy called me fat. Mum hit him in the face with the frying pan, and yesterday I ate Daddy face-shaped eggs while trying to figure out how to figure out my new quirk without causing a singularity and collapsing, well, everything around me, Okuko explained with a pout. Toru Hagakyu hummed, bringing a hand to her chin, then she lit up. In both senses, her hair gained a slight glow. How about we contact Midoriya-san? He knows about quirks. He broke ours and made a plan out of what he knew. By just seeing them once, he could help. No, Tsuyu muttered. Just can't. Still have nightmares. The cold, the feeling. She shook visibly. Tsuyu-chan, Okuko muttered. Look, Midoriya-san is a good person. I can feel it. Just because he uses the entropic death of the universe as a weapon doesn't mean that he is evil or something. He uses what? The girls asked at the same time. Oh, you girls didn't know, Okuko said innocently. Seeing them shake their heads made her wonder. That thing he used against the bow before All Might finished it off and then against the worm, the Kamas, she explained. They had this feeling of finality in them. It explains why Asura-san finds herself panicking against it. It is the very personification of the end, Momo replied. It's Tsuyu, Kiro. And it does explain so much, yet he uses it too freely. I can't trust someone that uses his quirk so freely. It is something that our parents taught us. What society taught us. He's not a villain, you know, Gyro stated with a small frown on her face. Honestly, that kind of thinking is outdated. Just because his quirk allows him to manifest the end of the universe as a visible, tangible thing doesn't mean he is some sort of supervillain. Honestly, he looks like a gerbil or something. That gerbil tore an entire haul of bows on his own just to vent his anger, Momo reminded Kyoka. Look, all I'm saying, he knows shit. We need to know shit so we can sort our shit out. So what if Tsuyu-san is afraid? So am I. But not taking the chance of someone who knows his stuff helping us is honestly stupid, Gyro added. For a moment the 6 girls remained quiet, stuck on their own thoughts. Then Okuko did an Okuko. I'm gonna call him now, she declared, already looking for his profile, which was painfully easy, to be honest. For someone that looked so plain-looking, he stood up in a Google search. Odd. Okuko, no. The girls cried in sudden surprise. Okuko, yes, she cried as she found his profile. And oh look, he had a video chat profile. How convenient. The moment she hit the invite to group and the screen opened, she knew she had hit gold. Not only because she thinks he is kinda cute with his curly hair that looks like a puff ball, or the fact those eyes are so innocent-looking despite the fact she saw him literally tear Bo's limb by limb, or the fact he is so small that he must be born to be cuddled. She knew she struck gold the moment his screen lit up, and music began to blare, dancing at the tune of Queen. Sister, I live and lie for you, mister. Do and I'll die. You are mine, I possess you. I belong to you forever, forever, forever. Oh, did she forgot the adorable little girl with silver hair, red eyes, a horn on her forehead, jumping and dancing at the tune. Like him? Nah. Then the music picked up and they just began to jump like they had no care in the world. There the girls noted that he had a shirt, a plain black shirt that said T-shirt and Bermudas. Oh, also they noted that he had tattoos, glowing tattoos. Jesus above, he is a walking contradiction, Gyro muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. This also meant Izuku, who stopped. The little girl just kept jumping around without a care in the world, a smile on her face. Then he turned to face them, his eyes wide and mouth in a perfect O shape. Hello, Midoriya-san, Momo broke the silence. Then he turned into some sort of shadow thing that crawled under the bed and hid there with a squeak, all while the little girl kept dancing around. Never. Well shit, he is a gerbil. He even sounds like one, Mina said with a teasing grin. Gonna let him live this down. Okako for her part just looked at the screen where Tsuyu was shown, a smug smile forming on her lips. Well, Okako began, her question directed at Tsuyu. Okay, I'll admit my fear is unjustified now 5 minutes later. We won't speak of this again, Izuku muttered, a headset firmly placed on his head, with cat ears that glowed. How can we not? You have a cat-themed headset, Toru replied with a smug smile. This is a Razer X, top-of-the-line chat for gamers and, oddly enough, company meetings. I actually bought it just a week ago because the Doomguy helmet is a bit too much for chats, Izuku said with a sigh, looking at the girls on the screen. First, how you guys found me? Okako, the girls answered, pointing a finger to the brown-haired girl. Traitors, the lot of you. I think the appropriate word here is it too, girls. Izuku replied with a small smile. Oh, don't you start, mister, I hid under my bed, Okako said, making Izuku flush. But we can tease you later. Now we need your help, she said, making Izuku blink. Help? He asked. Yes, Kiro, Tsuyu replied with an even tone. It's our quirk, she added. Then Izuku answered in a way they didn't expect. A groan. Oh dear God, you guys too? He asked, much to their consternation. Wait, what do you mean? Okako wondered. 3 days ago Kaken contacted me because he had been chatting with the other guys. As in his words better said, this shark-toothed dumbass basically brute forced himself into my chat and my life, end quote, and dragged several of the guys who had been chatting with him to Kaken, and they all apparently had the same issue. Their quirks are so new to them now that despite being, at their core, their original quirks, they feel like a new thing, Izuku confessed. So Kaken pulled a Kaken and pretty much dumped a bunch of people on my lap to help and kinda added himself to that list because I know for a fact he's done blowing up pants and shoes and wants a way to control his new quirk without the need of wearing shorts or carrying a spare pair of pants, shoes, and underwear in the worst case. Oh, the girls chorused, clearly shocked by this. Apparently the guy with the electric quirk, Kaminara-san, thought that I was more capacitated than a licensed quirk counselor for this. Also, I'm cheap and I won't give their parents a collective ulcer if they step out of the house for more than 5 minutes due to the roaming parents looking to kidnap. Oh wait, excuse me. Take their children back, Izuku said, making the girls cringe at that. They knew what he meant by that. Everyone did. The attack of the troop did more than cause a sudden drop in a generational group. It caused a massive trauma in parents. In their case, their parents became overprotective, so much so that Okako was afraid they might not let her go to UA out of fear they might lose her in some capacity, and that was her alone. Momo complained that she could not go and take a small walk in the estate gardens without an armed escort of 3 bodyguards, each armed with an assault rifle with hollow-point rounds. For a small walk of 15 minutes because Momo, despite living in a mansion, was starting to feel like if she was living in a gilded cage and could not interact with the outside world. This was Momo, who had a garden. Mina was about to melt a hole in the floor just so she could go to an arcade and play some DDR because she feels she has so much energy she might combust if she does not do something else but scratch her butt and study. Then there was the other side of the tragedy. On their case they survived. Their parents were overprotective because they survived what to others was a deadly moment. Others weren't so lucky. The massive funerals for the children had snapped something within several parents. Some broke down, basically moving on to the daily motions because of routine, no motivation, no energy behind it, just plain simple inertia moving them, and many were afraid of what would happen when they stop. Others moved quickly to fill the void left behind by their children's deaths. Adoptions went up the roof during those months. Some people blamed those parents for forgetting their own children. Truth was, they never did. The adopted children were like comfort food, a way to forget, even for a little while, the pain of losing one's own child. And despite what some might say, those adopted children were the only thing stopping those parents from slipping into a deadened husk or into madness. The third class of parents that came out of the tragedy, the truly mad, the loss had been so devastating that they had spiraled into madness and tended to see their dead children into other children. Now devastated and maddened parents plus superpowers plus overworked heroes and police equal a recipe for disaster, as the coming months began to show. Kidnappings at plain daylight, fights that tore streets, children wounded during those fights, death. This were not the average power-hungry villain the heroes we're used to fight. No, these were grieving and maddened parents. People sympathized with them but also wished they would not destroy someone else's happiness for their own sake. Have you got attacked? Tsuyu asked Izuku, and Okako noted a small frown forming on his face at the question. Yes, Izuku softly admitted. I think the only reason I am allowed to leave the house and get Eri-chan to school is that Mom knows that I can take most of my opponents before they can even think of attacking, but there had been incidents, Izuku admitted. Eri-chan, the little girl. Your sister, Tsuyu asked. Izuku nodded at that. I too have siblings. They have been targeted and now I know I can crack bone with a whip of my tongue, and it's also poisonous. Kiro, there was silence after that revelation, one that was broken by Gyro saying, open with something like that. You don't just she did, Okako said. Which also means that you have a way to help us without leaving our homes, right? Okako said, directing her question to Izuku. Yeah, right now I have literally all the time in the world, can make some dates and counsel you all, 2 hours each. But considering we are all cooped into our homes, the most I can help you all is the identification of what you have and body limitations. Hopefully, by December we can all go out and practice somewhere, Izuku stated. Preach. Also tell Kirishima that I'm going to get him for not telling me about this, Mina said with a sour look on her face. Kirishima, the one with sharp teeth. Mina nodded at his question. Yeah, he said you would react like that, but in his defense, apparently hardening makes him grow. Excuse me, what? November, Island, 5 days after the attack. Melissa opened her eyes with a gasp that was choked by the tube sticking down her throat. In a panic, she reached for the offending tube that was covering her mouth and making her feel awful and began removing it. It was discomforting, horrible, and it somehow tasted of slated bread. Miss Shield, no, she heard someone shout, but she paid them no mind as her hands grasped the device and pulled. She was disgusted somehow that it didn't make her gag. Idly she realized she felt numb in some places, so she must be drugged, surely for this to be inside her esophagus. Miss Shield, stop. Something latched to her arm, trying to stop her. This is for your own thwack. Her arm lashed angrily at the intrusion. She heard a cry of someone, but she didn't care, only that she wanted this thing out of her throat, now. With a mighty yank, Melissa finally pried the thing out of her mouth, coughing and reaching for her neck. She instantly was aware of the needles and cables stuck to her skin. She yanked them too, drawing blood as the metal was removed. Even after 200 years of medical advancements, needles were still a thing and she hated how the wound closed. Wait, what? Melissa looked at her skin. The holes the needles had made had been visible. But now? Running a thumb to one of the wounds, she blinked as she spotted flawless skin, not a hole in it at all. Melissa looked at the wound, mind working overtime to piece together what had happened. It wasn't only when 2 nurses tried to tackle her, only trying to move what they described as trying to tackle a stone pillar, did Melissa realize what had occurred. Siva, she uttered as she looked at the room and saw a door, a bathroom hopefully. Making a beeline, she ignored the calls for her to stay put, even pushed another nurse that tried to stop her and had a damned needle on his hand. Opening the door, she saw it was a bathroom, so she entered it, then closed the door behind her. The nurses and doctors all gathered in the room, all apprehensive and helping their fallen comrades stand up. Then the lights began to flicker. The monitoring systems around the bed began to come to life and act erratically. The freaking door began to hiss and open and close without a command. Their watches began glitching, displaying error after error, screens distorting like the wave of a sound. Then it all stopped. Then the bathroom door opened, Melissa, coming out of it. The next person who tries to tackle me, I will punch, capiche? A nurse, a nervous one at that, did just that. Bum. And now was on the ground as Melissa held her fist angrily, her knuckles slowly turning to her original skin color after becoming black and red. Would it kill you guys to fucking listen? 5 days later. Entering her room, Melissa bit a groan as she saw her bed and felt the urge to flop into it and just sleep. She had rested enough back at Central Hospital. Right now she needed science. Especially with the little bombshell her dad and Uncle Mite had dropped on her lap 2 days ago. One for all, even with solar light stabilizing its frankly ridiculous power, was still deadly to anyone that wasn't quirkless. In fact, it got worse. She wants to blame Izuku for making one for all even more dangerous, but he had no idea at the time. Honestly, no one knew until her papa got into full science mode and researched the shit out of the quirk. One for all took the solar light that had been used to heal Uncle Mite and had been slowly assimilating it, adding it to its impressive arsenal. The only reason why his mitochondria was not mutated was that One for All could not store up genetic mutations, quirks notwithstanding, or change the genetic makeup of someone, hard as it tries. But storing quantum fire apparently it can, because why not? That extra addition had made One for All even more dangerous to anyone that isn't quirkless or Izuku. Izuku because he is a reservoir of strange, exotic energies that baffle scientists and surely still were well past his death, and quirkless individuals because, just like Nana Chimera mentioned, are empty receptacles that can accept anything without side effects. Sort of. She had a theory regarding why One for All had accepted Uncle Mite so well, and it related with him being so damn big, even before he got the quirk to begin with. The quirk had molded into his body, and as he got bigger, so did the mold from which One for All was cast and would be poured into the next in line. And therein lay the issue. She had seen some pictures of Uncle Mite in his teens. He was a tall person, and as he grew older and the training to get One for All got intense, his frame got wider, to the point that when he met her papa the first time, according to him, he hasn't reached full mass. Even as an emaciated skeleton of a man, Uncle Mite exuded a presence and size that baffled her, and he was really tall, like taller than Endeavor and even taller than Star and Stripe, who is an absolute unit of a woman. Those issues alone limited who could get One for All. Izuku could get it, but who knows how hacks will react to One for All, especially with all the strange energies that Izuku's body contains now. For all, they knew those two quirks won't get along at all and might end up destroying one another, and Izuku in the process. Then there was her. Good God, she muttered to herself, the weight of her uncle's words finally settling on her shoulders. Aside from Izuku and Mirio, she was the only other choice to inherit One for All, and the other two couldn't get it because one might kill, and the other it might turn into an exotic bomb, probably. The risk was so great that she was the only tangible, sensible choice to inherit one of the most powerful quirks in the world, the quirk that made her uncle. The quirk that might resurrect her dream. She had never hid the fact she had wanted to become a hero. When she learned she was quirkless, she had gone down a spiral, hurt herself trying to prove she could become a hero without a quirk. Her decision to become an inventor didn't come out of a whim. It took time, tears, and the realization that sometimes the world was a fucking dick and wanted to keep you down. So you had to become an even bigger dick to the world and say fuck you, and take the oranges it gave you and somehow make them into lemonade. It was a simplified version of how she became the person she is now. She had to work hard to be at this point, study a lot. In a nutshell, it was the same for heroes, but with more torches and engineering lessons than with legislations and etiquette lessons. But now, she cannot lie. She always had a longing for her old dream to help directly than help by proxy, to do as her uncle does, without the crippling injury of course. Be smarter, be better. And here she was, a golden opportunity was presented to her to do just that, to grasp her old dream, to be the hero she wanted to be. To be the hero she knew she could become if someone gave her the chance. Bringing herself to bed, Melissa brought her S-watch and began to diddly with its functions. With a satisfied nod, she pressed several keys, and the watch pinged green, showing its scanning function was activated. This was a different version to the one used on Izuku. In theory, it was similar to the RIG technology Jennifer had brought once, which means to have a status update on a person's health in real time. The S-watch had a similar function, a scanning function that scanned the body and compiled a list of both good and negative health issues. Blood oxygenation, muscle mass gain or loss, sugar levels, the works. It was an excellent way to keep tabs on patients with multiple health issues, not in real time unless linked to a computer. Then the feedback was in real time, but usually, It was used to ensure a better reading at a patient. In her case, she had linked the watch to her computer, but she was in no mood to watch the feed. Her mind was working like a supersonic jet engine. On fire and hopped out on space shuttle fuel. Lots of it. Could she really do it? Except the greatest quirk of them all. An ancient quirk that literally was a Rosetta Stone for quirks. A quirk so old that studying it alone could unlock the inmost secrets of quirks, their very origins. But it also meant putting up with its unnatural bullshit, because apparently the quirk was haunted. True, it validated the theory that quirks were more than an organ, something more casual in the spiritual sense. Something from within is yours because literally, a part of you is attached to it. And if she took the offer, she would have over spirits in her, which was weird when you think about it. She tries not to. Oh, also the imminent possibility that the quirk had grown so powerful that trying to use it might blow her up. Can't forget that. A ping on her watch made her sit up and glance at her computer. With a frown she stood up and went to it, tapping several keys and examining the data that began pouring in with a critical eye. This she excelled at best, data reading and application, and right now all the data she was reading was giving her mind ideas. And giving her, scarred, heart hope. This might work, she muttered, tapping more keys, bringing a screen of hair, a detailed graphic of her current skeletal and musculature frame, tendons and muscles being highlighted, and numbers running among the highlights. Eyes glancing at the screen, Melissa brought another screen. This one was more technical, and it showed the outline of her body, and a growing swarm of black and red spreading from her heart into everywhere. She idly noticed that her next screen, a scan of her vascular system, showed that her heart now had a nasty scar in the middle of it, a death sentence to anyone that might have suffered the wound, not to her. Oh, and it was also pale. Wonderful, Melissa sighed as she closed the screens and opened new ones. I got the heart of fucking Senator Armstrong, she muttered, bringing the technical of Siver in her, and the new directives it had taken to ensure her survival. And his hardening on traumatic contact, she muttered, working on the keyboard for some time. Maybe I can co-op it, master it, make it mine, activate on command, she uttered to herself. Then she bit her lower lip in something akin to frustration. The data doesn't lie. I can take one for all without many issues. Siver bulked me all in accordance to the Panacea protocol. My bones and muscles can take a burst of the quirk. But her mind stopped immediately. For all the time she had studied quirks with her dad, there was one big problem. She never had a quirk to begin with, and unlike hacks that came in with a built-in system to learn its usage, One for All had none. No quirk-aside hacks came with a fucking manual, and with such a powerful quirk you needed a fucking manual. It all came down to intuition, something she didn't have. Izuku's quirk came in with a way to train the user with its many powers that would come along. One for All didn't, and as much she loves and trusts Uncle Might, she has the slight fear that part of the reason he is so powerful even with a crippling wound was that One for All molded so well and made it easy for him to learn how to use it. Him being the first quirkless user of the quirk in question. She wasn't stupid. The moment she takes that quirk, it is going to bring a whole slew of problems on its own. She's 16. The latest recorded date of a quirk activation is Izuku's, and that's because his quirk had some obscure triggers that he would never be able to activate when he was 4. Also, his doctor was incompetent, just checking the x-rays, the absolute incompetent, Eggman-looking motherfucker. It all came down to one thing. She didn't know how to use a quirk, and despite the many papers regarding quirk activation and usage, one thing was papers, the other entirely was real, tactile feeling. Therefore, Melissa Shield sat in front of her computer for over an hour, her mind mulling for the pros and cons of her decision. She came with just a single con of her decision. No, it wasn't villain attacks. She was actually looking forward to applying mechanical force to break someone's face with minimal effort. No, the only con she found of her decision was that she was going to leave her friends behind. Island had state-of-the-art facilities and schools that further the progress of technologies. It doesn't have a school dedicated to heroics, and there is one school in the world with the pedigree, the teachers, and the know-how in how to deal with a quirk as volatile as the one she's about to get, and actually ensure that the user lives to cause compounded cranium trauma to a criminal the next day. There was only one school in the world that Izuku, the only person that knew about quirks more than anyone on the island did, wanted to go. Reaching for her watch, Melissa activated it and called for her dad. 5 minutes later, David and Yagi looked at Melissa seated across them. For some reason they felt like children with her seated the way she was, arms crossed and looking oddly serious. Okay, Melissa began. I thought about this, One for All, she began. And I understand from where Uncle Might is coming from, she added, seeing the two adults look at one another in some shock. Of all the quirkless people in the world, I am the only one Uncle Mite knows well enough to trust something this big. He knows me. The same can't be said of others, and we don't have the luxury of time on our side, especially with your wound, she added. Indeed, Yagi said with some regret. I know it's hard, and it feels like I'm imposing a burden on you, he said, seeing Melissa shake her head. It's not imposing, Uncle. You are giving me a choice. You have always given me a choice, something that life rarely gives any of us, a choice, Melissa explained. But unlike most times we have more than a choice, we have an opportunity in our hands, Melissa began. You said Izuku pretty much shouted Nana Shimura into existence, right? Yagi nodded at Melissa's question. That alone is a huge avenue of opportunities. We can pull from older wielders and see how they trained the quirk. Melissa raised a hand to silence Yagi before he could say anything. But I think you have a plan, right? Melissa asked her uncle, who actually nodded, reaching for something behind him, and then pulling a book, a thick book. We don't know the extent of your physical form now, Melissa, so to ensure you are a proper vessel for one for all and don't blow up, Melissa rose an eyebrow at that, so he knew about the possible side effects of such a powerful quirk. I took the liberty to make this, the American Dream Plan, light edition. He handed it to Melissa, who actually had her eyes bug out. Jesus on a pogo, Uncle. When you had did you just plan my sleeping schedule? Melissa asked her grinning uncle, who nodded like a dumbass. I should bonk you with this, Melissa began. But I can't find myself to do so, she added with a sigh, glancing at the schedule, eyes darting around, then sighed as she closed the booklet. This covers 5 months, she began. For in fact, David said, I helped to make this because I got the results of your body readings back at Central Hospital, he said. Right now you have the body of an Olympic athlete, he explained. And the dexterity of a paraplegic pupper, Melissa reminded. I take small steps because now my muscles are stronger, but my brains haven't caught up with the fact I can punch someone's jaw into pieces, she added. Add to that, Siva. I got subdermal nanits that act as contact shields. If my readings are correct, I can take small caliber rounds at a sedated pace. Siva's reproducing at a sedated pace inside me until it covers my entire body, she explained, lifting the booklet. I got one of the most advanced nanits ever created. They healed me. Healed a heart split in 2. I've seen the scans, Papa. I should be dead, she exclaimed, looking at both men in the room. Whoever wanted me dead is going to regret not killing me, she said firmly. We are doing this, but we are doing this right and smart, she said as she glanced at Yagi. Aside from Sir Night-Eye, who else knows about One for All? She asked. My teacher, Gran Torino, trained me to control how much energy I put on my attacks. He knows. He can help, Melissa nodded, then turned to her dad, and smiled sadly. Island has it all but a hero school, Papa, Melissa said. David just closed his eyes and brought his hands together. I know, he whispered, looking at her in the eyes. I know, how dangerous this can be. I seen it while driving this crazy lug here, he said, motioning to Yagi. Excuse me? You were the one insisting. I could jump around just fine, but Nenno, you wanted to make a Batmobile and flex on the police and Sergeant Cross, Yagi stated with a pout. He was an asshole and you know it. Okay, enough both of you, Melissa said with some mirth in her voice. She never imagined that her papa's beloved monstro was in fact a product of spite and showing off. Then again, she can imagine it, men and their overpowered cars. Anyway, then you know what I have to do, right? She asked. Her dad slightly smiled, but it was a sad smile. I know, and I know I can't stop you. You're just that stubborn. All of your inventions, all the creations, Siva. All was made as an outlet for your dream, your original dream, he said, walking to her and taking her hands on his. You just can't help yourself in that regard. You just want to help people, he added with a small smile. Melissa just smiled as she gripped his hands a little tighter. Okay, a little too much. She actually looked sheepish as she released her dad, and this one rubbed his hands together. Okay, priority list. Learn how to not break hands, she muttered to herself, then looked at Yagi. Uncle Mite, how long can you stay? She asked. I can spare 3 extra days. I have a lot of vacation days accumulated, he said in a joking manner, then turned serious. I assume you want to modify the plan, she nodded. I need to run more tests. I don't know how much Siva truly affected me, improved me. The Panacea Directive was made to heal patients that are comatose, to prevent body atrophy, ensure that exiting the coma is as smooth as possible, she said. It was never meant to be used while someone was on their deathbed or conscious. I had plans to branch the directive. Right now it is working on its core directives, Melissa mentioned. Heal, stabilize, and improve, she added. Siva will continue to do this until the directive is met, and I don't know when it will occur. so I will spend a good chunk of the day working on it with Michael and Cora and put a limit to it. Maybe at a new directive the Panacea directive will follow. Then I'll have to back up everything and bring my tools and, oh yes, she muttered like if she had figured the meaning of existence. Yagi already knew what she was planning. She looked like a woman possessed. So, Japan? He asked. That stopped Melissa, who turned around, a small smile forming. Yeah, Japan, she said, a smirk forming already. Besides, she said, I can't wait to see Izuku's face when he sees I'm going to UA as well. November 18th, Japan, unknown location. Shigaraki Tomura hated the outside. Granted, he hated a lot of things, but the outside he hated for different reasons. Half of them included his new teammates, Ua. Apparently, they got this crazy idea he needed fresh air, plenty of sunlight, and routinary walks around the woods that grew around the abandoned quarry that they called their home or base. He doesn't need fresh air, he has an ARC unit. Light. He has a lamp. As for walking, okay, maybe a little of that, but not around so much green around him, especially when he's dressed all in black. Then again, one of the reasons he didn't like going out was because the city had many eyes, and those eyes might get ideas. But in here he felt liberated. It's not the word he's looking for, but there is a liberating feeling around the idea of him being alone in the woods, without the need to be on guard 24/7. I'm going to eat your heart. Liberation. Gone. With a snarl, Shigaraki twisted to the side as he avoided a crimson claw that rent the air where once stood. With 2 pivots to his right, he touched a tree trunk with his 5 fingers, letting decay do its job easily and making the tree descend over his attacker. He assisted by kneeling, scooping dirt from the ground and tossing it to his attacker so it could not retaliate. Hitting his attacker on the face with the dirt, Shigaraki smirked as the tree fell over his attacker with a mighty boom. It rose dirt and leaves flew around. Getting close, he saw that his attacker was now no more than a goop on the ground, and groaned like never before. Twice. Shigaraki roared. He heard some shuffle from behind and turned, and lo and behold there he was, the masked man twice, a bipolar nightmare, even to himself. Yes? Fuck you. The man asked or shouted or cursed, making Shigaraki regret ever recruiting him. Even if his quirk was the equivalent of a copy glitch cheat on steroids. Why? Shigaraki asked. Your daddy told me to, I wanted to. Never mind, Shigaraki was feeling the migraine coming in already. Trust sensei to try and teach him something, while he's trying to get his shit together. Oh, he also told me to tell you not to vomit, upchuck bitch. What wwwhhag, and his mouth suddenly let out a grayish goop that began to envelop his body. See you, hope you break a knee. I'm going to kill him, Shigaraki thought as he was warped away onto the good doctor's lab, gasping and hacking for air. Sensei, what the fuck? He asked with some anger. Oh hello there, AFO said with a small smirk on his scarred face and strangely a British accent. Oh don't you dare pull that OBWAN bullshit. Kurogiri is a warper and you summoned me with the goop. You know I hate the goop. Also, Kurogiri needs the exact coordinates to create a warp of having a line of sight, which he didn't have, so, the goop, AFO said with a smirk on his lips. Shigaraki just growled at his cheek. What do you want, sensei? That you had so sent twice of all people to fetch me. The teen spoke with some scorn. Well, AFO began. 2 things I've learned recently. First one, he began, directing the attention to himself. Our island got attacked recently. Okay, what the fuck? Shigaraki wondered who was touched in the head to attack the island of fortress. Oh shit. Was it Wolfram? He asked, dreading the answer of sensei. All he heard was a chuckle of his sensei. I wish. Wolfram called this morning no less, confirming an attack to the island by some unknown attacker, directed at no less than the golden child of the island, Melissa Shield, the quirkless wonder. Shigaraki wondered, walking around and looking at several of the Nomu in development. Who is stupid enough to attack her without risking All Might's wrath? Even I know that's stupid, and I want to hurt him, but I also want to live. AFO agreed with that. All Might is a fearsome opponent, 10 times more if he is motivated. He has the scars to prove his motivation. Indeed, whoever tried this was not so keen, and has connections. AFO spoke grimly. An assault team of 10 criminals was infiltrated into Island. None made it, but that was the idea because they were a distraction from the assisting Shield-san with the bomb that blew on her face. Fuck, Shigaraki muttered, clearly shocked by this. They have someone inside. They planted a fucking bomb. That's level infinite of stealth, he exclaimed. But it seemed it failed. She's alive last I learned. AFO spoke. How you survive a bomb going off your face? He asked with some incredulity. Like I survived having my head caved in. Luck, AFO said simply. There's luck and there's bullshit, sensei. Whoever did this didn't want her dead. Otherwise, they might have been scraping her off the walls, Shigaraki stated simply as he brought his hands together in his own gesture of arms crossed, since if he did he might accidentally touch his clothes and decay them. Has happened too many times. So, no clue? Shigaraki asked, and was met with a looming dread when sensei shook his head. Him not knowing, being who he is, and with the contacts he has? Bad news, bad mojo. Whoever this person was, it was resourceful enough to do so without sensei getting tipped off up until it happened. As for the other news, well, the good doctor has made some progress which caught Shigaraki off guard. Really? He asked. So, is it ready? He asked with some eagerness. No, the doctor spoke from nowhere, making Shigaraki scowl under his hand mask. But it is in a state that is far superior than it was initially planned. You made it able to fight All Might to a standstill at worst and kill him at best. What the hell do you mean by improvements? Shigaraki asked. Well, to start, as thanks to the files regarding biological alterations you guys found on that warehouse, I was able to modify it so its body can take more punishment, the doctor began. Some people say you can get a quirk that can take away your pain receptors, but I find that stupid. Without them your body becomes unresponsive, the doctor said with a huff. Finally, Shigaraki was able to see the doctor, standing in front of one of the glass containers that held one of his many Nomu creations, to be more precise, the one Nomu created to fight and kill All Might. Which of course was missing its fucking skin, because of course it was. That's why you skin it? Shigaraki asked. Oh no, that was Toga, doing me a favor, the doctor said, making Shigaraki look at the doctor first and then at his sensei, before turning his gaze once more to the Nomu. The fuck kind of favor required her to skin this thing, on your command no less. You wouldn't let me look at this thing while it was created, and you let her touch it, what the fuck? The kind of favor for science. The doctor shouted the last part. You're a bad influence on him, sensei. Bold of you to assume he wasn't the bad influence on me, AFO said with a smirk. You're a 200-year-old troll, sensei. You have admitted it, Shigaraki said with a frown. Well yes, but he's the one with the long life quirk and 5 identities and has tricked the government into paying the funeral expenses of each one of those identities, AFO said, somewhat proud. Okay, I'll grant that, Shigaraki said. But again, what kind of favor involves skinning for science? The kind of favor that allows me to grow a new skin that can reinforce his formidable shock absorption quirk and have some insulation for fire, that apparently All Might now can use. For some reason, the doctor said with clear admiration on his project and some annoyance for what All Might had pulled out of his ass. Shigaraki admits that little surprise was just the worse. Since when the symbol of peace can fucking immolate himself to gain a fucking buff and one-shots a Metal Gear with a chop? Let me guess, had this occurred before, how long it would have taken for the Nomu to be ready? Shigaraki asked. A year at best, considering that All Might now has fire and had a huge boost in strength. If that hole in Hashima Island is of any indication of his new strength output, the doctor began. But with all the data gathered and the improvements I made to my own methods thanks to that data, we can modify Nomus in such a way I could only dream of. But of course time is always a factor to consider, the doctor said with a somewhat proud grin. So, when we can deploy this bad boy? Shigaraki asked, looking at the skin Nomu. And what kind of improvements I am looking at when deployed? Well, Nomu has the special, as you call it. 5 super strength quirk enhancer added with his colossal muscle mass for added effect, 5 shock absorption quirks that will be enhanced with the new skin I am growing up. Also I am adding insulant quirks for both thermal attacks and electric-based attacks, because at this point I expect God to smite us all, the doctor joked on the last part. However, considering how things went this year, Shigaraki was pretty sure it was no joke, despite the doctor being a non-believer. The beak is not for show, it is a quirk as well, super bite, mixed with another durability quirk fashioned for things like that. An enhancement to reaction speed, a new set of eyes because the old ones were bad, reinforcement to the skeleton and organs because reasons, and the piece of resistance, neutered to ensure compliance and better hormonal control, the doctor finished proudly. You cut off there, dicks? Shigaraki asked. While most like nuke their reproductive organs in both male and females, it allows me greater control over their hormones and controls them better. You would be surprised how easy it is to control a Nomu when their first thought is not fuck, believe you me, the doctor answered. You know what, never mind that. The time frame, he asked. March, any day of March, the doctor answered. Fuck yeah. I have my tank, I have my crew, All I need is a venue and some fodder to toss around, Shigaraki said with glee. AFO simply nodded, knowing what Shigaraki's plan was now. A shock-and-awe strategy, and an old but ever-faithful one. I think that you need to talk with your crew about this, don't you not? AFO said to his protege. Oh shit, I forgot. Still need to give Toga some shit for this skinning thing. Can't believe she followed your orders without bitching, Shigaraki muttered. Well, the doctor began. There was a lot of blood involved and she acted as if it was chocolate milk, and now I know things I wish I didn't, the doctor said with a neutral look. Hey, you got Toged. It happens to the best of us. Anyway, I'm gone, Kurogiri. Beam me up, he cried, only for his mouth to explode in the same goop that teleported him. Fuck not again. And he was gone, only a chuckle of AFO to indicate he was the reason Shigaraki was gooped away. Never gonna get old, he said with a smirk, turning to the doctor who rolled his eyes under his heavy glasses. Don't give me that look, you did that a lot back in your heyday, AFO accused the doctor. Yeah, well, that was before I had to work on a new body, the doctor said with all the seriousness of the world. All for one remains silent, but a small smirk works its way to his mouth. And how that is working on for us. Technically speaking, it should not be that hard. I made nomus out of corpses, reanimate them, and ensure their memories don't interfere. Making a body out of just DNA should be a piece of cake. Should, the doctor said, turning to his computer and tapping some keys to bring something on screen. All for one had long found a way to see in ways others find unnatural. The number of quirks that enhance sight and even add new ways to see things without your eyes was truly astonishing, so he had like 3 of those quirks working in tandem to see things on screen thanks to the very electric current the screen generated. What he saw kinda annoyed him. Technically speaking, making a new body should be easy. They had years upon years to perfect such a thing. For fuck's sakes, women had evolved to make human bodies with just a small sample of DNA and one added of their own, mix and match, and there you go, a human in 9 months. The data he was seeing suggested otherwise. Okay, what happened? AFO asked. It's the kid's DNA. Dr. Garaki snapped angrily. It's too perfect. Yeah, that's why I chose it as a baseline for my new body alongside my own DNA and a woman with exceptional genes, AFO said simply. You chose fucking Nana Shimura. You have any idea how hard it was to find fresh samples? You have her arm on a jar, AFO stated simply. I also chose her because she was the perfect female specimen, fit, strong, and big, but not grotesquely big. Also, I want to fuck with All Might's mind when he figures out I made a body I use out of his dear old mentor's corpse. First, that arm is on you. You came with that thing and handed it to me fresh out of battle, and you asked me to chop its hand later. Second, yes, I get it, she was the fucking perfect female specimen. Can't argue with that. Her genes are a delicacy, but apparently, the boy's DNA decided fuck this, I'm out, and have resisted many attempts at splicing. Dr. Garaki snarled. And it pisses me off. For a moment All for One just remained silent, then sighed. Doctor, have you considered the idea of, artificial insemination in some capacity? AFO asked. I have, the doctor snapped. On one of your female nomus. Oh, the doctor said simply, then actually slapped his forehead in anger. I am an idiot, he exclaimed tiredly. Don't blame yourself, doctor. I have also fallen on that trap, overthinking things. I have learned with time that sometimes the most complicated problems require the most simple of solutions, AFO consoled his old friend. Yeah, Dr. Garaki said with enthusiasm. It is not hard to modify one of the female-based nomus to have an actual womb. I think I have a quirk that can help us with the splicing and accelerate the gestation process. Also, I can control the growing process and ensure it is perfectly fed and nurtured. Then when it's born is just a matter of helping it grow to a suitable age and modify if needed. See, elegant but simple solutions to hard problems, AFO said with a small smile. Seeing how his friend worked himself into a stupor or joy after a small revelation, and that revelation led him to more revelations. So, timetable? AFO asked simply. Honestly, not a damn clue, but I dare say December of next year. This is after all your new body if what you have with Shigaraki falls flat, Dr. Garaki said simply. Honestly, your plan with him is incredibly volatile. It relies on too many what-ifs and God I hope this works kind of thing, he added honestly. I am aware, nevertheless we must always have backup plans, and backup bases, AFO said. Look, I am not moving from here. Your base in under a hospital, it's a miracle no one has found this place. Look, you do you, I do me. And when I do me under a hospital under the noses of the so-called professionals, Garaki sassed. You're considering it, are you? AFO said with a smirk. Yes, is it a base under a mountain too cliché? My friend, we are too old to give a fuck about cliches. November 19th, Island Airport. I'm going to miss you so much. Melissa failed uselessly in the grasp of Jennifer and her head trapped between her breasts, which was something she should have seen coming. This woman had tried so hard to get in her pants, and had gotten under her skin on more than one occasion. She should have seen this coming but knew. On the side she heard Cora and Michael snicker at her predicament. She could vaguely hear her father trying to contain some giggles, but he was failing. Then there was Uncle Mite. In his skinny form, and there were no more boobs on her face, appeared when a 7-foot-tall, skinny as hell, looking like a zombie and with blood on his mouth guy comes around. Well, it scared the horny out of Jennifer. For now. She just knew that Jennifer was going to break someone later tonight, and she didn't want to think of it anymore because you. Shaking her head, she saw just one box left near the private jet that would take her away to Japan and into something she had dreamed for so long but knew she could not get. Things were different now. Are you sure you want to do this? Cora asked out of the blue. Don't get me wrong, it's cool you want to live your dream and pretty much tell whoever tried to kill you that I live, bitch. But you know, island scientist, you know a lot of things, Cora replied. Melissa just smiled, placing her hands on Cora's shoulders. You of all people knew that at one point just making things to help people wouldn't be enough for me. Now, Melissa said, rising one of her hands to her face and letting Siva travel under the skin. The skin shifted from her natural color to a metallic black and red with hexagons, a late-minute modification they had made and was just settling in. Things are different. Trust me, all will be fine, Cora. Trust me, she said simply. What Cora's trying to say, Michael said, is that we are going to miss you and things won't be the same without you here, he said, smiling sadly at Melissa, who answered with the same kind of smile he was giving her. I know, I am going to miss you too, she said, hugging him. What I'm not going to miss is you too, okay? Michael shouted, breaking the hug. I know we love you, get better and kick ass, don't say anything, Michael said and whispered the last part as he patted his longtime friend on the shoulders and then saw her turn around and go towards the plane as she gave them one last smile. I'm gonna miss that swaying ass. Oh, for fuck's sakes, Jennifer. Michael and Cora chorused as Melissa did one last stop. Her papa. No words were said, they just stared at one another. They weren't needed, they hugged one another for a solid minute. It spoke enough for each one of them. I will miss you. I love you. Be careful. Eat your breakfast. Sleep, papa. Do not overwork yourself. Don't work overnight, dear. Don't give me that look, I know you will. No words were said because they weren't needed. With a small pat on each other's backs, they broke the hug and Melissa went to the plane waiting for her. All the while both David and Yagi talked, away from the teens, a conversation in secret, things that were put in the plane for Melissa's safety. Things that they might not be able to get in Japan. 5 minutes later, the plane was already on the air, having left Island airspace. Melissa stared for a solid minute how the only home she knew for over 10 years became smaller and smaller until it became only a dot in the ocean. Japan, UA Academy, that night. Shouter Aizawa blinked in frustration as he stared at the piece of paper in front of him. He wanted to scream, he wanted to rage, he wanted to toss someone from a window into the cold, unforgiving floor for this bullshit. His tired eyes shot to about when he heard the door open, and he slightly relaxed when he saw Nemurai, midnight for most people, walk in, with the same paper in her hand, a scowl on her face. You read this too? She asked her fellow hero and teacher. He simply nodded at this, seeing her sigh long and hard, a frustrated sigh. He had never heard her sigh like that. Nedzu wants us all in the meeting room to discuss this, she motioned with her hand to Shouter, who simply sighed as well. He was really looking forward to sleeping tonight. It took him 5 minutes to reach the meeting room, more out of exhaustion than anything else. He had to admit, his time when he helped train Izuku may have spoiled him with some extra sleep, and some warmth provided by Izuku's Well of Dawn may have granted him more than some boosts of strength when he returned to active duty after the Raxus incident. It sure helped after the attack on Japan as a whole. Now he missed he could sleep some more because he had to pull triple shift. The attacks had caught them off guard and the aftermath was worse. Most people didn't leave their houses unless it was for work, and they left in large groups to dissuade anyone with ideas or took their children to schools, those that still did, and traveled in large groups to dissuade grieving parents from doing something they might regret. Nights were worse nowadays. Criminals and villains had taken on using the nights for gatherings or planning, whatever they did. Look, the villain scene has been oddly quiet after the attack of the troop on Japan, but that wouldn't last long. Patrols were a must and people had to know that despite the tragedy and the size of it, heroes were still around. Entering the meeting room, he spotted his colleagues in both heroing and in teaching. Midnight was already seated, her usual flair for flirting absent. MIC was oddly silent, staring at the piece of paper with a heated glare. Cementos was in an odd state of agitation, if the state of the blueprints in front of him were of any indication, probably a plan of Nedzu to counter this bullshit. Hound Dog and Ectoplasm were discussing something. By the look of things, it was a security plan of some sort. Then there was Recovery Girl, who had a thick folder in front of her and studied it with care. He noted that the folder had a picture, Izuku's picture. Snipe, Power Loader, and 13 were discussing something. Whatever it was seemed to be heated by the way Power Loader moved his hands and how 13 was shaking her non-helmeted head and the exasperation on her visage. Then there was Nedzu, who was seated at the top of the table, eyes closed and fingers crossed to one another. Aizawa sighed as he took a seat and looked around, waiting for this to start. Nedzu started it all by simply opening his eyes. Everyone turned to silence at that, as Nedzu rarely started things so formally. "I take you have read it." Everyone in the room nodded, focusing their sight on the paper on the desk. It wasn't just the paper, but what it had written in it. The HPSC had sent the statistics of the damage dealt by the troop during their attack on Japan and their deployment in mass of their bows and metal gears, alongside the total of the dead, including civilians caught in the attack and the students that had died during the gas attacks. The results in it were less than encouraging. According to the HPSC, almost 80% of the population of children ranging from the age of 10 to 16 had perished during the gas attack. For the surviving 20%, things looked bleak. Not accounting what their parents might allow them to do, because most parents of surviving children are paranoid to a fault, it is believed only 5% of that 20% will forward an application to a hero academy, any hero academy. Now those percentages put into numbers made things worse. UA tended to receive over 1,000 applications. Those applications tended to be weeded out to 5,000 due to either bad calligraphy being the least expected reason and grades and annotations for behavior being the first and second reason. They were either green-lighted or rejected. Of those 5,000, only 220 students make it to the respective courses, with 13 being recommended students to the hero course, the support course, and the management course. If these numbers were right, and apparently Ectoplasm was crunching the numbers already, UA would only get 200 students, as in only 200 kids would apply, instead of 5,000. This was on UA alone, the most popular academy for heroics. They were accounting for the fact that UA was attacked by the troop and might scare some people off. Those were the estimates at UA. Other academies had either favorable or not so favorable numbers. Suffice to say that the numbers painted a bleak picture. If there was a new class of heroics, they would be the last for over 3 to 5 years. Children from the age of 14 to 12 suffered the worst of the gas attack, having a fatality rate of almost 100%. Also, there was the fact the Ministry of Education decided to meddle in the situation, despite the ongoing investigation that he had regarding his ties with the Hondas and therefore the troop. His last act, which seemed to be aimed at crippling the already damaged heroic education system, and out of spite, was to instigate a series of laws that had been passed just shy a day ago thanks to, in part, to the still ongoing chaos the Diet had regarding the state of the country after the attack of the troop. From vetoing hopeful hero candidates to basically nuking the recommendation program all academies used to push onward their recommended students into the hero course, the list of crippling blows to the hero curriculum seemed aimed at that, to destroy the hero program at its core. At the hero hopeful before they can even begin their training. But perhaps the worst attack was aimed at the schools themselves. All academies worked with the same principle. They were day schools. All students came to study for the day, then left for their homes. The latest law pretty much ensured that unless the hero schools found a workaround, they would simply cease to exist. Then there was the real mess. The HPSC had gotten wind of this, apparently, days before the law was passed, and instead of blocking it, they permitted it to happen. Why? Because they had their own plans. Everyone in the hero business knew that the HPSC was a dinosaur, a thing of the past compared to the WHA. Problem was that the HPSC was heavily entrenched in Japan's political arena. They had contacts within the Diet and had shaped themselves to be near indispensable to work without. It was unthinkable to the populace for the heroes of Japan to exist without the HPSC. However, there was a reason UA was built upon the standards the World Hero Association had set on heroic academies, not the HPSC standard, something Shiketsu Academy had replicated. One of those reasons was that the HPSC could not poach their students, as any interference on their studies by any third party not approved by the institution in question. In this case, Yue and Shiketsu would meet any meddling with a lawsuit. In other words, they could not take any of their students, even if they find them promising and have potential. Their words, they have used those words before. There was a reason Hawks, despite being a hero, didn't have any kind of studies in any hero academy. He was private tutored by the HPSC, picked up before he even could join an academy, or any school, at all. This also meant that without hero academies the HPSC would have free rein into picking any hero hopeful they wanted, no law getting into their way. Aizawa knew this. There was a reason Midoriya's file was on top of other files of hero hopefuls with rather powerful quirks and potential. Yeah, we did, Hisashi said with a small sneer. Real question here is, what are we gonna do about it? Already thought of a solution. Cementos, if you would. Nedzu motioned to the concrete-made hero who simply slid a blueprint to the middle of the table. So Aizawa muttered, you're finally doing it. You're fully breaking out of the HPSC mandates and turning UA into a boarding school. Not only that, Nedzu said with some excitement, thanks to Midoriya-kun's little war against the troop, we have access to an untouched base that I have sent Power Loader to cannibalize and transport to UA for use alongside anything non-biological for our use. Silence after that declaration. Why? Midnight asked. There they noted how Nedzu became. The troop caught us off guard, he said, furry fingers interlaced with one another. They attacked us without warning. Worse of it all, we weren't properly prepared for any attack of the sort. People died, Nedzu declared simply. Buildings we can rebuild, but lives are another matter. The loss of life cannot happen again, Nedzu began. You know that happened despite how prepared we were. Right. Recovery Girl said simply. No one expected the gas attacks. No one expected the bows and the metal gears basically teleporting in. Sure as hell no one expected the freaking mobile base and the bow modeled after All Might with pro-hero quirks spliced in, she added. Yes. However, we could have deployed faster. We have become complacent, he reminded. Now thanks to these new restrictions we will have less space for training unless we adapt and bend the laws put to constrain us, Nedzu. And the first step is to drive Aizawa-kun into an early grave because 13 wondered out loud, making Midnight and present MIC snort and Aizawa roll his eyes. Oh no, that's step 10. By turning UA into a boarding school we bypass the first obstacle. There are restrictions for academies with the day school programs. There is nothing written about boarding schools, Nedzu began. The parents won't like it, especially if the media get a wind of this, Aizawa countered. They got really hungry after the attacks and want more to feed on, especially if the HPSC is feeding them, he added. They will learn, it is inevitable, but we can control the narrative better than the HPSC. We are turning UA into a boarding school to ensure the safety of the next generation of heroes without any outside interference, Nedzu stated as if practiced. We will have to change their curriculum, Midnight stated. Hell, I think we have to change everyone's curriculum, she added with a frown. Not exactly, Nedzu stated. The next third and second years will have the same curriculum. We cannot change that. They already are acclimated to the current system, but the newcomers are another matter entirely, Nedzu stated firmly. It's going to be a logistic nightmare. Even with the low student count we will have a bigger issue, Ectoplasm began. It is quite feasible that one of the courses will have more students, at the same time the others can have less. I would not put it past that this year we will have only one heroic class and 5 general classes, and we will have to adapt to that, he added simply. Already thought of that, Nedzu added. Again. What haven't you thought? Aizawa snarked. How to break it to you that All Might is going to be a teacher here, Nedzu cheerily said. I hate you, so much. No you don't, the teachers replied at the same time. In any case, Recovery Girl cut in. There is still the issue of the HPSC. I am sure they are out recruiting already, painting a pretty picture, as they did with Hawks and Nagant. Everyone in the room winced at the mention of the missing lady Nagant, the hero that killed the former HPSC head after being used as a hitwoman. They knew what had happened and what had led to her action that night. They didn't know where she was currently. Not even Nedzu knew, and he tends to know things others don't. Yeah, Midnight muttered. I assume that's why you have Midoriya's file on top of a pile of other files. She asked only to see Snipe, Power Loader, and 13 size at the same time. The kid's a nuclear weapon, the answer to what lies beyond the singularity and a hero nerd. So yeah, Power Loader began. And yet he's the least complicated one of the bunch here, 13 muttered, motioning to the pile of files. He just happens to be the one that has a better control on what he has, and his is the only non-mutation by the gas, 13 explained. Take Toru Hagakyu for example, Snipe said. Her original quirk was invisibility, like real invisibility, perfect refraction of light, so good that you couldn't see the outline of her body. Thermal vision was the only way to get a hold of her in case she decided to strip, which opens such a can of worms, the gun hero muttered. But now, he asked, she is visible, but there is a catch. Her skin is literally siphoning the light around her. It allows her to become visible, with the added benefit of adding standard super strength and durability. Think Superman, but just nerfed strength and durability. No super speed or laser eyes, and we don't know what happens when she drains all the light she has stored and becomes invisible again, or if she can expel all that stored light like a laser snipe remarked. That's the simple one power loader. Itsuka Kendo original quirk was Big Fist, an increase of massive hands to the point that a hit of those is like getting hit by a bike. Now she has a strange gigantification quirk. According to the doctors, she can increase the mass of any part of her body at will, and at full body gigantification, she reaches a 3 stories building height. Twice of what the original mass her gigantic hands could achieve before. She gains this by actually consuming high lipid dense foods and high calories foods and suffers no negative back draws on her body, he added. Take this one too for kicks. Mina Eshido, her original quirk was acid. She could release acid from her skin at will and at any density and solubility she wanted, from harmless liquid with neutral pH to bone-melting acid. The back draw was that she could use the last one without hurting herself for a small amount of time before her skin began to feel the effects, Recovery Girl stated, then looked at everyone in the room. Her mutation is quite strange. She grew exoskeleton-like plates on the length of her spine and around the floating ribs, over her skin. Also grew a barbed tail that has enough muscles to, if she wanted to, can punch trough an engine block of a tank. And if it wasn't enough, I received her latest physical. The tail tip is a pressure valve that can fire molecular acid, incredibly potent, so potent in fact that it can burn through rock in a matter of seconds, Recovery Girl sentenced. Oh, I also forgot she has extra muscles on her legs. Everyone that wasn't Nedzu and Recovery Girl just sighed, having processed the information and what it meant. The 3, aside from having evolved quirks, also had evolved bodies. Bodies adapted for their new powers, a huge evolutionary jump from what they had before. The gas Aizawa began. What it was composed of, he asked. Aside from several chemicals that are used in the creation of trigger, the main component of the gas was in fact Midoriya's blood, Recovery Girl revealed. Come again? Midnight asked. Sigh, the gas, it had Midoriya's blood mixed in with several chemicals that act as a stimulant for quirks and encourage an evolutionary jump. Problem was that the chemicals were not exactly aimed at human usage. But you said the chemicals used are in fact part of the trigger formula, Hisashi exclaimed. Yes, but there is something else, Recovery Girl stated. Midoriya's blood is a powerful bonding agent. His DNA is incredibly malleable, but only when his quirk, Hax, is acting up. Otherwise, it does nothing, Recovery Girl explained. Therefore the troop found a workaround, a brute force workaround like. Snipe wondered. Iona 11, Recovery Girl began, causing Midnight to nearly have a heart attack. They what? Everyone that wasn't Nedzu shouted, Aizawa now more alert than before. Yes, Iona 11, Recovery Girl confirmed. But that shit is incredibly toxic and mutagenic. I know, Yamotoku and Recovery Girl answered. I believe it to be the reason of the fatality rate being so high. It is not apt for human use of any kind. We can't even touch it. Only Cementos can touch it safely, and that's because his skin is concrete, not actual flesh, she explained. Iona 11 was one of the most dangerous mutagenic elements ever created. Originally made as a cure for the quirk pandemic by the Americans, or so they said. In reality, it was one of their greatest mistakes, as it had a fatality rate of over 100%. How it could be even deadlier than 100 was anyone's guess, but they did it, and the mountains of corpses of both quirked and non-quirked who took the miracle medicine was a testament of such lethality. It was also highly mutagenic, but nothing tended to survive that long to figure out how bad something would mutate. There were only half-mutated corpses to study, and those corpses tended to be incinerated due to their toxicity. Apparently, the troop found a workaround to the lethality and mutation via Izuku's blood, which might explain some things. Like the sudden mutation of the children's bodies, it was a registered side effect of its victims. There was still speculation as to why their quirks mutated to such a degree, but Recovery Girl had some hypotheses already. Most of them involved Midoriya and his blood mixed with enough chemicals for it not to work, yet it did. In any case, Nedzu replied, cutting the thoughts of everyone out. It is imperative that we safeguard these kids from the machinations of the HPSC. We all know the tale of Nagant. We all know the end. We can't let it happen again. especially if these teens are the key for a better future, Nedzu stated with passion. And how we are going to do that? Aizawa said, fully awake and focused on Nedzu. You know, we start in April, the acceptance exams happen in February, a lot can happen between here and February. There Nedzu smiled, making Eraserhead tense. Whoever said we are going to follow the original schedule? Nedzu stated with a smirk. Because of the limitation presented to us, we have to take a lot of liberties with time. The new class of students will have a difficult time taming their new quirks, discovering things of powers they thought already tamed, Nedzu began. They will carry a heavy burden as a generation of loss. Their class will have to endure at least 5 years without new blood in their ranks and a new, hostile world that no one is ready to. Not even us old-timers, Nedzu clarified. So it is imperative that we as the teachers create new methods and ensure that by the end of that time, none had succumbed. The old methods aren't enough. That's why All Might is coming to teach. That's why he's bringing his old teacher with him to teach. Recovery Girl actually looked at Nedzu with surprise. Sora's coming, she asked. Yes, it took little to persuade him, Nedzu admitted. After All Might himself is bringing new things as well, and for what's coming ahead, we might need it, Nedzu explained. What do you mean by that? 13 wondered. 13, do you really think the troop is just going to give up? Nedzu began. Or that the weakened state of Japan wasn't noted by others, he added. 2 days ago a villain from China was captured by Endeavor when he was leaving a boat, Nedzu explained. 3 days before that Mako busted a drug ring that was forming in Nagasaki, from Honduras, he added. 2 weeks ago the wild pussycats went head-to-head against a human trafficking ring that has its base in Africa and was taking orphans from an orphanage on Yokohama. That's just the tip of the iceberg. The eyes of the world are on us, both good and bad. The MLP is still a danger and we have no idea who are its members. Humorize most likely is extending its tentacles to try to set a foothold on Japan as we speak. Not to mention the foreign nations that might get ideas, Nedzu clarified. Jesus, Snipe and Ectoplasm muttered at the same time. As you can see, we cannot be complacent, otherwise people will pay the price of it, Nedzu stated. We are already receiving the registration letters for the acceptance exams. We are updating the UA website to inform everyone that on January 3rd we will host the acceptance exams and start classes on January 15th. God, we are really doing this. No more coddling, the HPSC Midnight uttered. No more was all Nedzu said as he directed his gaze to Eraserhead. To that end, Shotoku, and you cannot keep expelling students. We need all the good press for this, and expelling students won't do it anymore. Nedzu rose his paw to stop Aizawa from speaking. I understand your reasons for what you did before, but understand that was before when we could. When we could afford it, we cannot anymore, Nedzu reminded. Your lesson, you can teach it in another manner, the Erasure hero sighed, but nodded, knowing what the principal meant. I'm sorry to cut your rest short, but we have no other choice. The world rarely waits for anyone to be ready. So let's pay the world with the same coin and don't wait for a disaster to happen. It was night on Musutafu, and Izuku was still awake. With pencil in hand, he continued drawing and tracing lines, sometimes erasing something, but he was hard at work. It had finally hit him, what he wanted to be as a hero, the image he wanted to portray himself to others to see. As he gazed at the half-finished sketch on paper, he smiled a little. It was not something heroic-looking or inspiring. However, as Uraraka had said when he had shown her the sketch of the first part of his future hero costume, it did not have to be. It was his, and that was enough. With a smile, he continued drawing, the image of Dread, blades, and bunnies staring back in paper at him. Chapter end notes. I just figure out that we can't add more than 75 tags. I kinda think I know why, but it's kinda annoying I had to erase some tags, but whatever. Also, I refuse to use the beginning notes on this one. It's kinda redundant after the first notes in the prologue. So here we are. We start Hack 2 proper. Next chapter, the entrance exams, the very bare visited exams, because every single background character is dead or traumatized as hell, or going somewhere else. I will try my best to post at the end of November, considering this is an off-season month for Destiny 2, the second longest season as far as I'm aware. But since I am playing the Outer Worlds and discovered its delicious satirical comment on companies and everyone but you being nuts, or you join them in madness, let's just say I might be posting on December. And no, I will not add TTD, that's why Blade Mode is in. The Prismatic Hammer on the other hand. This is HPYN0S wishing you all good fortune and healthy days. See you all in the next chapter, with a brave few. Chapter summary: with a brave few, the first milestone for many. The entry exam for UA Academy is the true start of their lives. Or, the the start of the madness. Chapter notes. Hello all, HYPN0S here, in agony but here. So to summarize, a new variant, now named after a fucking transformer, appeared. We learned who is the traitor and Toru now became BAE just because. This month has been hell because of a pain I feel right at the end of my sternum and spreading to my right side and at the back right where the shoulder blade tip is. Agony. Creams work, but I am considering going to a doctor, although I am not in the mood of popping too many pills, but right now the alternative is pain, and looking at the possible sources of the pain don't paint a pretty picture, from torn muscles to an actual hernia. But you're not here for that, you're here for the next chapter, which might be smaller and lower on quality on amount of, well, my pain, sorry. So let's kick this show on the road, shall we? See the end of the chapter for more notes. Chapter 2. With a brave few. December 1st, Dagobah Beach, morning. A grunting noise broke the morning routine of some runners that jogged at the sidewalk but dared not enter Dagobah's beach, currently a dump. There were rumors of bow nests in the dump, so most joggers dared to run around the beach in groups, and on the day, they did notice that some piles were getting smaller than they were before. Inside the labyrinth of trash that was Dagobah, however, things were different. One more, Melissa hissed as she gripped the dishwasher that someone had tossed to the massive trash heap that was the beach. With a grunt of effort, Melissa dragged the dishwasher of the pile it was stuck in. Her hands coated in sieve nanits prevented the rusted edges of the dishwasher to dig in and cut her hands open. Once the dishwasher was in the sand, she was able to easily lift it up, moving it onwards to the waiting truck of her uncle. After placing it in the back of the truck, Melissa took a small huff of air, then turned around and continued working. She had started working on this dump as soon as she arrived to Japan, meaning a day later. According to Uncle Might, this was a twofold thing. In the first hand, it was physical training, permitting him to see how much her body had adapted to Siva and the changes it had undergone under Siva's Panacea directive. On the other hand, this was social service, as her uncle told her heroes were public servants first, crime fighters second, something newer heroes had forgotten, and he was going to hammer into her head as she cleaned Dagobah Beach. Also, the place didn't have bows at all. In all honesty, her uncle had scouted the beach first, to see if the rumors were true. Surprised they weren't. The beach was empty, and despite being an ideal position for a nest well, all the rust made it impossible for the lickers to try, them having no skin and everything around the beach being sharp. The work here had been accelerated thanks in part to her enhanced physiology and Siva making her skin kinda cut-proof. On one hand, she was strong enough to lift heavy objects and move faster than she expected, and with Siva making her skin impervious to small-caliber bullets and cuts, she was able to lift most objects. She would need gloves too, which eased the job by a mile. Still, there was so much trash around Melissa-san. The blonde bombshell looked behind her, finding the source of the familiar voice that had called for her, and her blue eyes widened in surprise. Izuku. The girl looked as surprised as the greenate, yet that didn't stop the smile from forming on her lips. Oh my god. You're fine, she said with a smile as she jogged to his side. For his part, Izuku just shook his head with a small smile as he hugged the girl, this one hugging back. Dremyo lock friend, she said with a smile, one he replied in the same manner. Melissa, what are you doing here? Not that I'm complaining or anything, but last I checked you had important projects, Izuku asked. Melissa sighed at this, debating herself right now if she should tell him what she is thinking. Of course she is going to tell him. Well, she began. Far from the beach, Yagi was getting Melissa some water and light food. All this work was hard already on her. Add that with Siva still active and demanding even more nourishment to reproduce within her to cover everything inside her mean she was eating more than she should, even with following the American Dream training plan. Honestly, he was kinda glad she was eating this much. He was kinda worried she might wwwwwhhhtt. Everything shook. The sky seemed to thunder with Izuku's voice. Oh, his sudden scream must mean something, considering how freaked he sounded. 5 minutes later. So, Siva, Izuku said, arms crossed and looking at Melissa like a father grounding his children. Yes, Melissa answered simply, all while seated on what used to be a fridge. I made Siva, she added. I have Siva in me. Words can't express, Izuku muttered. He brought his fist to his mouth and bit in utter frustration. Melissa-san. Do I have to remind you what the fuck Siva did to the Iron Lords? Melissa looked exasperated. Look, first off, I'm not Culvis Bray, so my shit has actual fail-safes and kill switches. 3 in fact, she pointed out. Second, it is not tied to an AI that went mad after seeing the impossible and finding no way to cope with it, she added. Third, the Siva I made doesn't work on the commands of consume, enhance, and replicate, I know, Izuku said. seeing from the corner of his eye at the form of Yagi walking in, water bottles in hand. But can you blame me? That thing killed the Iron Lords, nearly all of them. Only Saladin survived of over hundreds. Melissa nodded at his statement but didn't answer immediately. I nearly died, she began. Siva was finished, she added with a frown as she touched at her chest, where the glass shard had cut flesh, bone, and her heart in two. Someone knew that I was making Siva, a miracle nanite solution for medical applications. Put a bomb where I was and somehow smuggled villains within Island into a suicide mission. It's a miracle I am alive, she answered. Izuku simply stared at Melissa, then turned and stared at the sea with a sigh, the implications of what she had told him not lost to him at all. You think it was an inside job? Izuku asked with a side glance at Melissa, who shrugged at that. Could be. No one else knew about Siva. It was a project I held in secrecy for a long time. It wasn't until I had hammered all the kinks in the programming that I dared show it to the board, she explained, but then shook her head, like vanishing a bad idea by some reason. But that doesn't matter anymore, Melissa stated, lifting her arm and showing Izuku how the skin darkened and jagged, becoming hard as steel, yet as flexible as normal skin. I had to make split-second decisions that day, she began. I don't regret them because at the end of the day those were my decisions. And, OFA? Izuku asked, aren't you worried how a bicenturial quirk will react to nanobots? No, Melissa answered. Siva is just technology. It is not a quirk. It is melded within me, my bones, my blood, my skin. I calculate that by January I will have Siva completely on my body, she exclaimed simply. And all of this. Izuku motioned to the trashed beach, there Melissa smiled fondly. Uncle Might's idea. Believe it or not, he's not all about punches, she smiled at that. Heroes were public servants first, superstars last, she quoted. This is a two-plan thing, she stated as she reached for something in her pocket, then fished it out and tossed to Izuku, who caught it. Seeing it was a small booklet, he opened it up and began to read, his eyes widening upon the contents in it. The American Dream Plan, Super Light Edition, Melissa began. A training regime I have been following since I arrived to Japan. These have been some hellish days. Aside from moving trash here and there, I have been running about and getting cardio like crazy. Even my diet is heavily regulated. But doubled, she said, slightly flexing an arm while moving the sleeve away and showing the bicep. Siva has helped too. I reckon this is easily 3 months of training accelerated into 10 days, and no body but yours would be able to take it, considering your light, conduit, and parasite energy-enhanced stamina, she explained. Yeah, but my body doesn't accelerate the results. I just can increase the workload with ease. You are getting the accelerate training and benefits results, there she scoffed at his remark. Benefits? Sure. You don't feel the burn on your muscles thanks to the light and darkness and being part conduit. I do, she pouted at that. I go to bed feeling like if a cow decided to sit on me, she stated, but slightly smiled. But man, is it worth it. I have a 4-pack, she said with a grin. I never had a 4-pack, or muscles to that matter. Then you were a gelatinous mass when I met you. Oh, shut up, you, was all she said as she finally saw her uncle reach them. Come on, Uncle Might, is just Izuku, she teased. Just Izuku, she says. Izuku muttered. Betrayal, Dishner. Dishner on you. Dishner on your dad. Dishner on your cow. Pipe it down, you two, Yagi said as he handed Melissa a water bottle and sat nearby. Young Midoriya, I didn't expect you around. I imagined you would be playing helicopter brother with Era-chan. She's at school. Just came of delivering her. Mom's at work and I am pretty much free on the morning until I have to help make lunch, Izuku said as he formed a ball of void energy and began waving it on his hands. Let me guess, Melissa began. No one has tried to kidnap you because a young child like you look alone and homeless and deserve a happy home, am I wrong? She said with a serious tone. Happened to you too? Izuku asked with some shock. Melissa scoffed, shaking her head, but her eyes told another story. Those were sad eyes she had. Happened on my first day here. Uncle Might was called for a hostage situation, so I was alone. Then this woman came and looked at me. I was bored, so we talked, but I had this nagging feeling something was wrong with her. So I asked Melissa, saw how Izuku made a face at that. Yeah, turns out I look a lot like her little girl, a 12-year-old that died during the gas attacks, so she was in this trance like I was her little girl back from the dead, Melissa sighed. Then she got this manic look in her eyes that just went off the moment it came. She bowed and then left. Learned the next day she had jumped from a bridge, she stated sadly. You got lucky, Izuku said simply. And at the same time so unlucky by that last part, Izuku seemed to consider something, eyes focused on the sea. There was this lady, she kept stalking me whenever I took Era-chan to school, didn't pay it too much mind. I am literally unbeatable to the average civilian. Quirk or no, he began. But then I decided to confront her. She might be scouting to get Era-chan. There he scoffed a laugh. The moment I confronted her, she got this look of joy, called me Saito, and asked me why I had dyed my hair green and had painted freckles on my face. Izuku continued. But then this guy came and swept her under his arms, apologized to me, and then ushered her away, all while she struggled, but like that half-assed struggle, tired. You know you can't get away, but you have to try, but you have no strength left. That was her, Izuku said. I looked at the name, and there it was, a guy that looked just like me, but swapped the hair color to gray and removed my freckles, and he is the same image as me. Turns out he had survived an initial attack by a nutjob that stabbed him and sucked his blood with a straw. Yeah, Izuku clarified while Melissa had a look of utter shock on her face. Not far, All Might grimaced. He remembered the case. He survived only to die during the gas attacks. That can mess with anyone's mind, Izuku said simply. And that's just us. I got friends that have similar stories. Some got out light. The parent just wanted to see their children one last time. Other times the parents are so deranged that they see their children in anyone of their age, Izuku added. It hasn't been easy, All Might confessed, breaking the small silence that had fallen on the two teens. As a hero and symbol of peace, I have seen the scene too many times for my liking, and despite my best efforts, despite the best efforts of the heroes, cases still happen, he stated. This is why I wanted to become a hero, Melissa said. Help. Be a beacon of hope. Be their rock on tiring times, she admitted, then lightly laughed. Chose one hell of a time to be one, didn't I? On her sides, Izuku and All Might both smiled, knowing that what she meant was the truth. Oh, just you? Izuku asked. Case you didn't figure it out, Izuku said as he stood up and then turned, picking the fridge he had been seated and lifting it up. I'm aiming at that too, my dream too, he said. Now come on, this beach ain't gonna clean itself, he said with a small smirk. Melissa simply shook her head, standing up and reaching for what she had been seated, and lifting it up. This, she realized, was Izuku's way of saying to her that she wasn't alone, not anymore. December 15th, Tokyo International Airport. Hisoshi and Miko Midoriya both left Island on the 14th of December, him leaving as the team already prepared to cover for his absence and another team in Japan waiting for his arrival eagerly. 3 days before their arrival, their effects had arrived home first, mostly Miko's stuff that ended up becoming part of Eri's room, including another bed. By the time their plane reached the airport, Izuku, Inko, and Eri were waiting for them out of customs and passport controls. The meeting was eventful. Miko ran past her father and hugged Izuku and Eri, all while Hisoshi ambled by and slowly hugged and kissed her, touching foreheads with smiles on their faces. The ride home was less so. 3 villain attacks, and it was on heavy quotations because the villains in question were like Hisoshi and Inko. They had this parent-like aura and were fighting over children. While in the taxi, Izuku instantly hugged Miko and Eri, then the 3 puffed into purple particles, all while the attacks occurred. It had been a strategy that Izuku had developed to prevent unnecessary fights. After all, the grieving parents were looking for children who can't look for them if they aren't there. True, it was unappropriated quirk usage, but things had come to such a point that the self-defense clause was being called in every occasion when things like this occurred. After that small occurrence, the taxi trek to home was relatively harmless, aside Miko's curiosity as of when she would start studying. Apparently, she was eager to start classes but was told by Inko and Hisoshi to cool it, as right now transfers and inscriptions were going through a methodic screening moment. All thanks to Aldera, the school that would stop functioning next year, as most of its students had transferred to other schools, had done one last fuck you to all, not only its former students. When it was revealed that Aldera had served as an involuntary training ground for villains as some sort of social project by the troupe, people demanded many things, most of them stupid, but one of them was a stricter screening of newer students. This led also to be revealed that many of the captured during the Colosseum raid had escaped, many of them former alumni of Aldera and also members of gangs, which led to a sense of paranoia as many of them had, at one point, hurt or killed someone. To Izuku and Inko, this meant that B and her cohorts were out and about, but also knew that her cohorts or her were on the run. A country wanted them, especially after what they did in Korriban Reformatory. They trying an attack on them might as well be suicide, especially with how Izuku is now. B and her cohorts only knew small aspects of what Izuku did back in the Colosseum, not what he did back at the troop base. As they reached home, Izuku helped move the luggage and helped his father and sister move in, so said sister holding Eri's hand, all while Inko and Hisoshi walked behind them. The future looked so strange now, even more for Izuku. On days he would help Melissa with the beach, the work of 2 superpowered teens, one with extra arms, has reduced the trash heaps in such a way that it looked more like a crew was doing the work rather than two people. All Might had noted this but didn't have the heart to tell them to stop. After all, Melissa had already pushed the threshold her body was required to accept one for all without her blowing up, and with the entrance exams moved basically 3 days after the new year meant that from this point onward, everything was done on a crunch. Everything was done on mayhaps and hopeful thoughts. On the days Izuku helped with the beach, but come noon he had to leave to help make lunch. Eri was still at school. Miko was basically attached to him but was responsible enough to be left alone in the house while he helped while Inko and Hisoshi worked. In the noons he made lunch with Miko, helped bond. Then when it was done he and Miko went to pick Eri up. It was by far the most perilous thing considering it's 2 children 3 when he picks Eri, walking around, without adults around. That's why most parents with their children walk with them, or so they admit. In hushed tones they will admit he is more of a deterrent. Hauling a massive, flaming siege maul isn't a deterrent enough than the kamas made out of tactile dread are a far greater deterrent, as many would-be kidnappers learned. After their parents come home, the rest of the day he spends it working on his future hero outfit sketch and other things he wanted. Or he would spend time bonding with his dad, who he had not seen in over 10 years, or his sister Miko, who was the product of rape and nearly used as a political token and an attempt at a quirk marriage. That was his routine until the day of the acceptance exams. For Melissa, however, January 1st, night. Entering the apartment she and Uncle Might shared, Melissa took a deep breath as she collapsed on the sofa. The day had been odd. New Year in a different country made her somewhat homesick. Island, being a melting pot of cultures, had a host of several end-of-the-year and New Year celebrations that varied from one another. Some are similar to others that at first glance you can't tell them apart, others so drastically different that you don't know if they were the same at one point. Yet she had never experienced a genuine Japanese end-of-the-year and New Year celebration and tradition. Cleaning the apartment had been odd, especially on the last day of the year, but her uncle, as usual, appealed to her sense of logic in embracing new things. Also, he turned it into training because he can't spend a hot minute without making her lug something heavy to train her body. All the traditions that came with New Year actually exhausted her, mostly for how many things occurred at the same time and how serene it was at the same time. It was like a calm version of Black Friday. How that can happen she doesn't know, but it happened here. That sense of discipline and order that had permeated Japanese society, even with the advent of quirks, was still present in their oldest traditions. Then of course Uncle had to take her to the beach to end what was left of the cleaning. Between a girl that can harden her skin with a nano solution and somehow gain some measure of super strength augmented by an ever-growing one thanks to the training, and a boy that can grow 6 extra arms, well, the beach was clean. If the whole hero thing didn't pan out for her and Izuku, they can always start a career as cleaners of beach and tackle the plastic island on their own. After that, more things to do and some grocery shopping. Night came in, and with it her uncle's way to start New Year. Eat this by giving her one for all, by presenting her one strand of his hair for her to eat. Apparently, the only way to pass one for all was by DNA transmission, which sounded cooler, but it wasn't. She took either his blood or his hair, or EU. She took the strand of hair and ate with a loaf of bread and milk because there is no way in hell she is eating that thing alone. Somehow, she tasted hair over the taste of milk and bread. How the fuck? After that, and a heart-to-heart since she felt like she wasn't earning the quirk due to her being the only viable choice, which her uncle told her it wasn't that, and tears and stuff, she went to bed. And the quirk decided to kick in while she was asleep. Well, not that she could say she was asleep when she was in the freaking void and she could see only a storm of darkness and a freaking ball of light she assumes is Izuku's solar light infused with one for all in the sky. Dreams are weird. She tried to move, but her body felt numb, which she assumed was on part of having a quirk that had the combined consciousness of its past bearers. Her uncle gave her a haunted quirk and now she was seeing its ghosts. The first one was obviously Nana Chimera, and Melissa wasn't petty enough to deny the beauty of the woman in front of her, or the fact she was built like a brick house. She also could not ignore the images that were buried in her mind after researching her and finding out the last pictures of the battle site between Nanamite and All for One, and what was left of her after. Then one by one the former wielders of One for All began to show, as shadows covered by the storm, which didn't bode well at all. It could mean many things considering that One for All, at this point, must have crossed the singularity threshold. The fact she couldn't see them when she should mean that she wasn't ready. Then Nana was already in front of her, placing a hand on her shoulder. It was then that her eyes were able to zero on the hand and her shoulder, and her eyes widened. Her shoulder, no. The rest of her was covered in the same shadows the other wielders of One for All were covered. Hey, Nana suddenly spoke to her. Don't be disappointed, she said with a comforting smile. We all start small. It's what you do from this point onward what defines you, she said as she released her shoulder, then with her fingers pointed to her own mouth and stretched her own smile. So smile, you're not alone. It was there when she woke up, eyes wide, drenched in sweat, and the bed looked as it had been ground zero for a thunderbolt. Quirks are fucking weird. January 3rd, UA Academy. Mina Eshido bounced on the balls of her feet, her tail swaying lazily as she saw that a rather depressing amount of teens walking around to enter UA halls and take the entrance exams. Just like her, the announcement of UA to basically speed up the exams up to the third day of the new year and turn UA into a boarding school caught everyone off guard. She had barely time to finish her registry and mail it to the school before the deadline arrived, which had been December 30th. Then again, from what she had heard, UA's sudden shift into gears was warranted. According to Yaromomo, her official nickname and permanent one, the Board of Education had made less than stellar moves that had crippled the education system across Japan, dead. Of nearly every teen from the age of 12 to 15 notwithstanding. Mina wasn't exactly the brightest bulb around, but she understood enough to realize that the sudden shift into gears of UA was a desperate move, one that the other academies had to take in order to survive the coming storm, especially with the amount of legal talk Yaromomo dumped on them. The only thing she understood was that if this didn't happen, UA couldn't take students. No students meant no heroes. No heroes meant villains running rampant because the current heroes would be whittled down by the sudden influx of work and lack of reinforcements, and even with the actions of UA, it would at least take 5 to 6 years to be able to ship the number of hero graduates it could before. That was just UA and the hero academies. Normal schools had it worse, so bad in fact many had to close and pool the remaining students into a single school and invest in security due to the concerns of parents. The fact her mother almost didn't let her come was a testament to the worry of several adults. Her mom is the most chill woman she knows, and if she was willing not to let her go and follow her dreams out of fear, then things were bad. This was reflected by the small number of teens coming to UA to take on the exams. She had seen the videos about the exams, how these very same steps would be chock full of teens ready to take on the exams and live up to their dreams. Only a handful would make it, and in hindsight, it seemed that today wouldn't be different. You look troubled. Mina resisted the urge to jump from her skin and into the air when the smooth voice of Tokoyami sounded behind her. Tsuyu might have an instinctual fear of Izuku due to stasis and him being able to literally hit you with the end of it all, but Mina had a thing against shadows. Mostly things that hid inside them. She had nothing against Dark Shadow or Tokoyami. Okay, she has something against Tokoyami, but only if he stopped quoting fucking edgy authors that send her mind into the edge and make her dream nightmares that honestly are scarier than whatever Tsuyu might think Izuku is. He is not a harbinger of the end times. Tsuyu not his not. Harbinger of cuteness maybe, after seeing him headbang to music that Gyro described as raw synth lawnmower metal. No one was certain of his cinnamon bun levels anymore. Oh, Eshido-san, Tokurami-kun. And speak of the devil, she thought with a mental smile, turning to see Izuku walking towards the hello. Who is that tall blonde girl at his side? Granted she is not Okako tall, but still she is tall. Greetings Abysswalker, and of course Tokurami began his edgy talk, ever since Izuku pretty much confirmed to them that stasis was in fact the heat death of the cosmos and also the cold despair given shape. Tokurami had begun calling him Abysswalker. It helped somewhat Izuku would call Tokurami by his given name. It didn't help at all that Tokurami might have given Izuku an idea for his hero costume based solely on that. Something about Dark Souls, whatever it was, made Tokurami nod and call him a cultured one. Boys, she muttered under her breath, looking at the girl that accompanied Izuku. Any other day she would have teased any of the boys for hanging around with such a cute girl, hot too like she hit all the check marks. Today was no different. So Mina said as she slid to Izuku's side, like teleporting, inching to Izuku's side with a grin on her pink lips. Who's the cute thing at your side? Izuku actually blushed. It was kinda cute, but he blushed for entirely different reasons. Oh, you think we are dating or something? The blonde girl said with a small smile. Sorry to break your bubble, but 'tis like the brother I never had, she said with a smile, one that slightly strained. My small, murderous, rampaging light-bearer darkness wielding cell-igniting ancient tongue talker tattooed by ancient forces beyond our ken, transforming into a rabbit of a brother. Melissa-san, you make it sound like I look for problems. Izuku answered with a pout. And that I am weird. Didn't you say you were? Ribbit. The sudden addition of Tsuyu's voice made Izuku actually seemingly warp in and out of existence. only to reappear while holding two glowing purple daggers, aimed at Tsuyu. Why? Izuku hissed as he let the void daggers disappear from his hands. Everyone likes to sneak on me. Because it's easy, Melissa supplied with a grin. Oh, by the way, I'm Melissa, Melissa Shield. Nice to meet you all, the girl said with a small bow. Words can't express my loathe to you. Oh, don't be like that. Midoriya and Mina, while denied initially of her teasing, now had more ammunition when she saw Izuku beam in joy when he heard Okako call his name. Uraraka-san. Oh, I am going to enjoy this, Mina thought with a grin as she prepared to grill these two oblivious dum-dums into oblivion. Then decided against it, seeing that everyone was jittery. The way Izuku wrangled his hands and how his hand was coated in a nice sheen of arc energy. How Okako was fidgeting on her feet. How Tokoyami and Dark Shadow Eyes were darting around. Hell, even Melissa was nervous on account of how she worked on something on her watch. And why the watch has holograms. She knows she has heard the name Shield somewhere, but right now she was kinda nervous to even think straight. Is it everyone here? And in comes Bakugo from the fucking ether. How someone so loud can be so silent is a mystery that will probably elude everyone until the sun burns out. Yeah, as we agreed, even Midoriya-san brought a +1, a pretty one at that, Mineta stated, a small smile forming as he appreciated the form of Melissa. Yes. My man has classy tastes. A gentleman always goes for the blonde. Mina wanted to hit Mineta on the back of his head. But honestly, he is right. A gentleman always goes for the blonde. To be fair with Mineta, he was being tame, really, really tame. Seeing his entire class die horrible deaths, including several girls he lusted on, can literally kill the libido and ensure he drinks his respect women juice. He is still a little gremlin. Okay then, Bakugo exclaimed, seeing the last person to arrive to the large group, Shoto Todoroki, who looked bored with life. However, apparently, that is his default, for some reason. Well then, Bakugo said with a grin, catching the attention of the group, let's fucking murder this exam. Of nearly every teen from the age of 12 to 15 notwithstanding. Mina wasn't exactly the brightest bulb around, but she understood enough to realize that the sudden shift into gears of UA was a desperate move, one that the other academies had to take in order to survive the coming storm, especially with the amount of legal talk Yaomomo dumped on them. The only thing she understood was that if this didn't happen, UA couldn't take students. No students meant no heroes. No heroes meant villains running rampant because the current heroes would be whittled down by the sudden influx of work and lack of reinforcements, and even with the actions of UA, it would at least take 5 to 6 years to be able to ship the number of hero graduates it could before. That was just UA and the hero academies. Normal schools had it worse, so bad in fact many had to close and pool the remaining students into a single school and invest in security due to the concerns of parents. The fact her mother almost didn't let her come was a testament to the worry of several adults. Her mom is the most chill woman she knows, and if she was willing not to let her go and follow her dreams out of fear, then things were bad. This was reflected by the small number of teens coming to UA to take on the exams. She had seen the videos about the exams, how these very same steps would be chock full of teens ready to take on the exams and live up to their dreams. Only a handful would make it, and in hindsight, it seemed that today wouldn't be different. You look troubled. Mina resisted the urge to jump from her skin and into the air when the smooth voice of Tokoyami sounded behind her. Tsuyu might have an instinctual fear of Izuku due to stasis and him being able to literally hit you with the end of it all, but Mina had a thing against shadows. Mostly things that hid inside them. She had nothing against Dark Shadow or Tokoyami. Okay, she has something against Tokoyami, but only if he stopped quoting fucking edgy authors that send her mind into the edge and make her dream nightmares that honestly are scarier than whatever Tsuyu might think Izuku is. He is not a harbinger of the end times, Tsuyu not his not. Harbinger of cuteness maybe, after seeing him headbang to music that Gyro described as raw synth lawnmower metal. No one was certain of his cinnamon bun levels anymore. Oh, Ashido-san, Tokurami-kun. And speak of the devil, she thought with a mental smile, turning to see Izuku walking towards the hello. Who is that tall blonde girl at his side? Granted she is not Okako tall, but still she is tall. Greetings Abyss Walker, and of course Tokurami began his edgy talk, ever since Izuku pretty much confirmed to them that stasis was in fact the heat death of the cosmos and also the cold despair given shape. Tokurami had begun calling him Abyss Walker. It helped somewhat Izuku would call Tokurami by his given name. It didn't help at all that Tokoyami might have given Izuku an idea for his hero costume based solely on that. Something about Dark Souls, whatever it was, made Tokoyami nod and call him a cultured one. Boys, she muttered under her breath, looking at the girl that accompanied Izuku. Any other day she would have teased any of the boys for hanging around with such a cute girl, hot too like she hit all the check marks. Today was no different. So Mina said as she slid to Izuku's side, like teleporting, inching to Izuku's side with a grin on her pink lips. "Who's the cute thing at your side?" Izuku actually blushed. It was kinda cute, but he blushed for entirely different reasons. "Oh, you think we are dating or something?" the blonde girl said with a small smile. "Sorry to break your bubble, but 'tis like the brother I never had," she said with a smile, one that slightly strained. "My small, murderous, rampaging light-bearer darkness wielding cell-igniting ancient tongue talker tattooed by ancient forces beyond our ken transforming into a rabbit of a brother. Melissa-san, you make it sound like I look for problems." Izuku answered with a pout. "And that I am weird." "Didn't you say you were?" Ribbit. The sudden addition of Tsuyu's voice made Izuku actually seemingly warp in and out of existence, only to reappear while holding two glowing purple daggers, aimed at Tsuyu. "Why?" Izuku hissed as he let the void daggers disappear from his hands. "Everyone likes to sneak on me." "Because it's easy," Melissa supplied with a grin. "Oh, by the way, I'm Melissa, Melissa Shield. Nice to meet you all," the girl said with a small bow. Words can't express my loathe to you. Oh, don't be like that." Midoriya and Mina, while denied initially of her teasing, now had more ammunition when she saw Izuku beam in joy when he heard Okako call his name. "Uraraka-san." "Oh, I am going to enjoy this," Mina thought with a grin as she prepared to grill these two oblivious dum-dums into oblivion. Then decided against it, seeing that everyone was jittery. The way Izuku wrangled his hands and how his hand was coated in a nice sheen of arc energy. How Okako was fidgeting on her feet. How Tokoyami and Dark Shadow Eyes were darting around. Hell, even Melissa was nervous on account of how she worked on something on her watch. And why the watch has holograms. She knows she has heard the name Shield somewhere, but right now she was kinda nervous to even think straight. "Is it everyone here?" And in comes Bakugo from the fucking ether. How someone so loud can be so silent is a mystery that will probably elude everyone until the sun burns out. "Yeah, as we agreed, even Midoriya-san brought a +1, a pretty one at that," Mineta stated, a small smile forming as he appreciated the form of Melissa. Yes. "My man has classy tastes. A gentleman always goes for the blonde." Mina wanted to hit Mineta on the back of his head. But honestly, he is right, a gentleman always goes for the blonde. To be fair with Mineta, he was being tame, really, really tame. Seeing his entire class die horrible deaths, including several girls he lusted on, can literally kill the libido and ensure he drinks his respect women juice. He is still a little gremlin. "Okay then," Bakugo exclaimed, seeing the last person to arrive to the large group, Shoto Todoroki, who looked bored with life. However, apparently, that is his default, for some reason. "Well then," Bakugo said with a grin, catching the attention of the group, "let's fucking murder this exam." "We cannot," Shoto replied. "We need it to pass. Oh, for fuck's sakes, poke ball." Melissa just glanced at this interaction, a smile forming on her lips. "I think I'm going to like it here." 2 hours later, control room. Yagi Toshinori made his way slowly into the slightly large, but still cramped control room within UA's halls. Not far from him walked Gran Torino, clad in his hero outfit and munching on a taiyaki. "Still can't believe the written exam got harder," Gran Torino muttered while munching on his treat. "Last time I was here it didn't cause so much pain as it did today." "Well, Sensei," Yagi began. "Training methods might have gotten streamlined, but knowledge gets expanded every year. It was expected for the written exam to get harder. Albeit I am told this one was slightly nerfed from its original itineration, making the kids no favors by taking it nicely with them." Gran Torino muttered loud enough for the group of heroes to listen when they entered the control room. "If you're gonna baby them, send them to Sei Academy. They love to baby their own. This is not baby them," Sora, recovery girl, stated simply with a tap of her cane or needle. "This is ensuring they are ready," she added. "By taking it easy?" Sora asked. The exam of this year was loaded with morally ambiguous questions, almost half of it. Of this batch of students, only 3 applicants can claim to not have been put on the knife's edge and make hard decisions that day, recovery girl smoothly said as she passed Sora. "Still think it was a bad idea. They might start expecting easy obstacles, even if it morally charged," Sora answered smoothly. Oh, honored elder, Sora actually was ready to kick whoever said that to him, until he saw who did, and the urge got tripled. There, on the room, stood no other than his Purple Highness, whose age wasn't showing at all. Fucking good genetics, Sora thought darkly as the sexiest hero for over 12 years made his way and clasped his hand with Yagi. The very fact we are placing these questions on the youth of today show us that we have lacked in their teaching, and must endeavor to be better. Better Maya Sora gripped. If we start questioning them now, they'll start questioning their actions. Better to teach them while in action rather than in paper, he reminded as he walked past and sat on one of the seats with a huff. Yagi just sighed, knowing that his sensei meant well, but he tended to lack tact, which he could get away with because he was old as dirt. He is right, both of them, Yagi sighed, knowing full well that the man in front of several screens, arms crossed and looking somewhat annoyed by, well, his situation, both past and current. Oguro-san, Yagi said to the tall man, one of the few people in the world, right now to have ever encountered All for One and lived to tell the tale. Most people AFO encountered and took their quirks from tended to die, not the man that was once a clock and was currently the retired vigilante knuckle duster. Maybe, Yagi uttered, but there is little we can do but to prepare them and ensure they are well. Of all the candidates today, only one has seen the depths of depravity the troop brought down and nearly drowned in the darkness. We can't leave them alone, Yagi said, standing at the side of the vigilante, our teacher, while Sora rolled his eyes on the back. Heard of him, Knuckle Duster said as more hero staff arrived and took their places along the hidden judges. The underground was buzzing with the news of someone who had butchered a Terminator doll, while Crippled the man said with a chuckle. Last I heard he earned himself a bit of a reputation. The former vigilante chuckled at that. What kind of reputation? Yagi had to bit the sudden yelp of shock when Eraserhead simply appeared and entered their conversation. Nothing too serious, Knuckle Duster mentioned. Only that the underground and most fresh villains know not to cross him, he said, making Aizawa frown. That's a good reputation to have, Midnight added as she sauntered to the group of males, after having said hi to her former mentor, His Purple Highness. For us, heroes, it is making an easy job of fresh villains who just realized who they are dealing with. But he's barely 15 and he already has one based entirely on his body count against the troop. Eraserhead turned to Midnight Midglare, one she answered with a roll of her eyes. That can easily turn against him. There are those who like to fight heroes, regardless of rank or power. They would relish fighting someone who is known to have turned several T-dolls into scrap with his bare hands. Ask All Might how many villains look specifically for him for a fight, and you'll see what I mean, Eraserhead mentioned. Well, All Might isn't here, just his secretary, so he can't confirm nor deny this, Midnight said with a teasing tone, making Yagi actually gulp and Knuckle Duster chuckle under his breath. The biggest secret of them all, who was All Might, was bared to the teaching staff not shy 2 days ago to ensure smooth interaction and addition of the symbol of peace to UA's teaching staff, an announcement he would personally make, the day the classes in UA begin, because they wanted to troll the press. Only the teachers knew this. It was a necessity due to what was told to them. He was retiring, all thanks to a wound. The very fact All Might had been fighting with a crippling wound made him even more of a hero in Knuckle Duster's eyes, but the reason why he got it and who made it made him angry beyond reason. The very same fucker who took his quirk, who according to All Might had his head smashed in, like a fucking watermelon. So he was dead, but he went on and weakened All Might. So now the symbol of peace decided that it was time to retire and pass over 40 years of experience to the next generation, which was good because these kids were wetter than water. And he trained the Crawler and Pop Step, who were at the time so green that it was a miracle they made it to this point and married. Luckily, the number of kids that wanted to join UA was minor in UA standards. The bad news was that this was the expected number of teens to take the exams for the next 5 years. All Might being here, he and freaking His Purple Highness and a retired old codger being here was to reinforce the teachings of the next generation. All Might brought over 40 years of combat experience. He and His Purple Highness brought the tactical aspect of the experience. He was sturdy enough to take on trigger-powered individuals and win, but there was a little tactic in those fights. He cannot tank all hits, so he tanks the ones that are weak and retaliate with brutal punches to the soft spots. His Purple Highness trained Midnight, Eraserhead, and present MIC. Enough said that the three still operate with the same energy as when they first started, a testament to the training His Purple Highness brought. He wasn't sure about the old codger Gran Torino, but All Might was terrified of the man, so he must be cool. The kids could use the fear of God put into them to shape up. So, what are we waiting for exactly? Knuckle Duster asked. For MIC to finish with his little speech. It's about the only thing that gives him hope, Eraserhead said with a nasty smirk. Oh, now that's rude, Shota. You know he loves to do the introduction to the practical, Midnight reminded. Just because he has the stage all for himself, he added with some snark. And what he is presenting exactly? His Purple Highness asked with a small smile. The obstacles for this year's exam, Nedzu spoke as he entered the control room and onto his seat. With the small number of students this year, We can do something only done when UA was had its first class, the chimera spoke with some mirth. A personalized exam from which every participant can be graded not only by points but by other avenues that are valued in hero work, not only their quirks, Shota said with a small smile. You sleep-deprived maniac, you finally got your dream, Midnight muttered with a shake of her head. Still they are taking on robots? Right, she asked. The 1, 2, and 3 pointers remain the same, Nedzu replied, but then smirked that nasty smirk of his that made teachers be always on edge. But we added something extra, courtesy of the troop's own data vaults, he said as he tapped something on his chair. Immediately the screen in front of the assembled teachers changed into what seemed to be 2 diagrams, showing 2 humanoids, things. They were mechanical all right, but they were nothing like the robots they used for the exams, being troop-branded. The third years on the support department went beyond the mile to bring us these bad boys, Nedzu began. We will only deploy one of each, labeling them the specials. They are programmed with combat data gathered in an initial run against our newly classed 3A and 3B, Nedzu said, hearing a small curse of Yagi. Are we trying to get new students or trying to kill them? Midnight asked. Tagatakuen is on that group. His fighting skill is nothing to sneeze at. If those things have his combat data, then those kids have little chance to beat them, she added. Add that to the fact the teens all will be together. There is a chance they will cross Midoriya. I've seen him massacre dolls in less than a second. Do you really think those 2 will survive him if he goes all out? Aizawa asked a valid question. Nedzu simply smirked and tapped another button. This time another robot appeared, and this one made Aizawa blink. The hell is that? He asked, eyes glazing on the specifications of the robot and growing horrified by it by the second. Doom 15 minutes later. Training Grounds Alpha. Melissa huffed as she finished her stretches. Just because she had a nano-swarm inside of her that could fix her right up didn't mean she was thrilled to pull a muscle in the middle of a fight. Uncle was less than happy when that happened before, during training, and the pain of Siva fixing her torn muscle was somehow worse than the pain of the torn muscle existing at all. Clad in a loose yellow tracksuit that somehow got tight on her butt, she knows she has half the boys staring at her butt. Melissa cracked her neck and glanced at Izuku on her side. Clad in a similar tracksuit, but in aquamarine, she saw Izuku manipulate void light into a ball and toss around his hands, eyes focused on the closed door in front of the large group. She couldn't still believe that this was it. She had heard that UA boasted the densest exam assistance of any hero academy in Japan, and number 3 in the world, only comparable with Florida's Academy of Heroics and Saint Dessin Academy in France. Seeing the number of hero applicants, she was convinced otherwise. 100. That was the number of applicants for the hero course for this year. Apparently, this trend would repeat for the next years due to the gas attacks. The attacks had been so nefariously planned to hit the hero industry in its most vulnerable spot, where it all began, children with dreams. Forget the bureaucrats, forget the agencies and the hero schools, take the children out of the equation and suddenly you have no more heroes. It had been Machiavellian in nature. Already there were talks of closing the schools, changing everything. In Japan, the epicenter of the attack, it had been shut down due to the sudden rise of criminal activity. But in other countries, it wasn't as hush-hush as many believed. Nevertheless, that was there. Hey, it was another story. Looking around, she saw several of the teens in the group. She walked with Izuku stretching and making their final preparations for the practical. Beating robots. God, UA is nuts, she thought with a grimace. No wonder the acceptance range was so abysmal. You were tossed into the frying pan from the get-go, sink or swim, bitch. Tinkering with her S-watch, Melissa began to set the settings for One for All. A neat little trick she learned with her 2 days of owning the quirk, which wasn't much, but it was enough. Siva had already been permeated by the energies that made One for All what it is. It allowed her some leeway into accessing the power without blowing into a pile of gore at first chance. That small element allowed her to manipulate the quirk's output to some degree. But it was a temporal solution. For all its advancements, Siva could only handle an assumed 5% of the power of the quirk, which spoke great lengths of its power, also of her body. Apparently, 2% was all she could handle now. After crazy training, a diet, and nanomachines in her body, that was her max, now, so she set to 1% because she is not in the mood of breaking everything. There is a reason women live longer than men. Her attention was suddenly diverted when she saw Izuku grab the void ball and crush it, infusing himself with void light, probably devour. Of course, he gets the means to heal himself. She gets the quirk that might blow her arm a la Robocop. But this was also a signal, her muscles tensed, her heart pumping, eyes narrowed. It was time. Time to live my dream. Hitoshi Shinso began to take deep breaths. This was it. He had made it to UA, and now literal monsters surrounded him. Each one of them had been mutated by the gas that had hit the schools months ago, all of them survivors of a tragedy that claimed lives in the hundreds. Not his, in any shape. He didn't held many friends back in school, and he wasn't even there when the attacks occurred. A stroke of luck, one would say. Mom had undercooked one of the fishes they had for dinner. As a result, she, and Dad ended up bedridden with a bad stomachache that sent them to the freaking bathroom at random times and sleepy and lethargic most of the time. Thirsty too. That had saved his ass from either dying a horrible death or mutating. His quirk had already given him enough problems. If it mutated, it might make him into some sort of Mothman thing because that's his luck. Glancing around, he sneered to himself. All these pricks with their fancy quirks and their easy lives, surely praised for them while he was treated like he was a dirty bomb because of his quirk. He will show them all, even his surviving classmates, all dickheads. Especially the girl with the admittedly great butt and luscious blonde hair and the short prick with the green hair at her side. Surely, their lives were easy. Izuku and Melissa both sneezed and had the odd feeling of punching someone, but he'll show them. He'll become a hero and rub his success in their faces with a SMI. He and everyone heard it first. The massive doors that led to the training grounds opening, like giants pulling them apart, a grinding sound that made his skin crawl. Then the stupidity began. Several of the hero applicants moved onwards the opening gates. The prick with green hair actually blurred out of existence, only to appear in the air and land in front of the group and make a dash onward, while the girl at his side simply dashed, being the last, but not hesitating when she saw movement. Idiots, Shinso thought with narrowed eyes. They have to wait for the signal. Well, it seems there are some who want to pass the exam. The voice of present MIC put a stop on Shinso's mind, and everyone else's. There is no countdown in real life. You move or you lose. Oh fuck you, he cursed as he and everyone else made a mad dash towards the opened gates, already behind and cursing a storm in their minds and also out loud. That was mean, present MIC muttered with a pout, blaming me for their lack of initiative. Maybe Vlad King muttered with a small grin. When they can't handle the load, they blame the beast. It's a human thing, he added. This also shows us something, Eraserhead mentioned with a smirk as he followed the screen showing the first runners. The troop messed up, he began. By exposing them to the horrors they will surely face as heroes, they galvanized them, forged them. He glanced at where one Momo Yarorozu formed a long cannon and fired it, while it was still forming on her arm. Each one of them knows the risks now, he added as he watched one Bakugo Katsuki simply blur around, hitting robots left and right, feet emitting low explosions that kept him flying and moving around. They know this is no game, he added after seeing the serious look on Bakugo's face. From here on out, he then spotted Izuku and Melissa, both back to back, surrounded by a field on one-pointers. They will act on instinct, onward, ever onward, he said as he saw both tents basically charge at the robot formation with a yell. That's both good and sad, Midnight muttered, memories she would like to keep undersurfacing. She felt the hand of his purple highness on her shoulder, a sympathetic look on his face. I know, but this is the path they chose. For good or ill we must support them and ensure they are ready. No one spoke as they saw the carnage unfold in front of them. Mighty number of robots we have this year, Snipe commented. Of course, these are all the robots from the 4 fields, but in one alone, Nedzu replied. You fucking rat, one of the hidden judges cried. We have to count that shit. Yes, that's why it is being recorded so you can see it again and again. You crazy bandicoot. Not even close to what I am, but I appreciate the effort. Nedzu laughed. Yagi just shook his head, eyes focused on his niece and how she fought. Or better said, how she flayed around and hit things. Shit, I knew I was forgetting something, Melissa-san, Izuku began. Sentinel shield formed around his hand as he smacked a one-pointer into atoms. Yes, Melissa said, holding another one-pointer by the head and squeezing, ending its struggle. Who taught you how to fight? Me. Who taught you? Not important. The hell it is. You're questioning my fighting skills. You're flaying like a damn Magikarp. Joke's on you, I'll turn into a mighty Gyarados and flail like one. Stuck on the side of a building with an unreadable look on her face, Tsuyu just watched this two bicker like her siblings and somehow keep hitting robots left and right. Izuku with his strange energy shield that disintegrated anything it hit and deflected any attack that came at him. Melissa with her flaying. He wasn't joking. It looked a lot like flaying about and hoping you hit something, which most of the time she did because these robots, while impressive looking, were oddly fragile. With a flex of her legs, Tsuyu was already flying towards a two-pointer, Twisting in midair, she aimed her feet at the back of the robot that was facing Izuku, the bigger threat. Bam! It paid dearly for that distraction as Tsuyu tore through it like tissue paper. Aluminum, Tsuyu heard Melissa speak. They are made of aluminum, she repeated. Are you sure, Melissa? Izuku asked, bashing another robot away, and just like everyone else, not having a single idea how many points he had. Yeah, the insides are well made, hydraulics are on point. It's the frame and the chassis that are fragile. I heard these mechs have steel alloys with titanium-like chassis to support heavy attacks, Melissa said as she ducked from the strike of a two-pointer and rewarded the attack with a slap to the head that yanked it off. And with this amount, Izuku said, disengaging the sentinel shield and surveying the chaos around them. He saw Okako basically becoming an anchor of gravity, carrying the remains of several one-pointers and using them as munitions against the other mechs. Aidia was zooming around, smacking every robot that he came across, but the sheer density of mechs prevented him from reaching full speed. Katsuki was blasting around, hitting every robot he came in contact with, but he was reaching his limit. Hell, the girl with red hair that was right now taller than a 3-story house was as well, getting peppered by the ammunition, fake of course, of the three-pointers. You thinking what I'm thinking? Izuku asked Melissa. Storm trance. Landfall first followed by storm trance. Oh, add some inferno. Maybe some unrelenting force, coup de grace, a concrete ball. Oh, you know me so well, Izuku said with a grin as he fist-bumped Melissa and then shot his left hand onward, the mark of the outsider glowing before a tendril of black energy latched to a nearby wall and yanked him away and into a mass of robots that just kept coming. In the air, Izuku channeled the light in him. In all honesty, he had wanted to use stasis. This was the perfect place for it. But with stasis having adverse effects on quirk users with animal traits or ties by just being there, let alone being used, it could impact negatively on their performance. So he de-iced his stick with some lighting. Gathering arc light on his hand, he let it fly downwards, crashing headfirst into a formation of 1 and 2 pointers. Each one vanished into atoms as Izuku floated on the ground, arc light enveloping him. I am the storm, he muttered as he shot his hands onward, an arc energy shot onward, arching and hitting everything in front of him, decimating an incredible amount of robots that was simply not made to fight against a fully unleashed light bearer. Look at him go, Snipe muttered, seeing the display and how Izuku racked up points like crazy. He realized that there were many mechs and decided to become a target. Eraserhead spoke. There are already 3-pointers converging to fight him, he added, seeing several 3-pointers rush at Izuku to engage him, as their programming indicated them to. It won't do them good, Power Loader muttered with a frown under his helmet. Last telemetry data on those mechs show that he is outputting more energy than they were realistically made to handle. He just vaporizes them. Midnight just shook her head at all this. I really hope this isn't the only thing he has to deal with mobs, or he won't do well in Crow Control, she stated. Oh, trust me, he has other ways to deal with mobs. He chose this one because his going for Inferno. Aizawa cut himself mid-sentence. What do you WHT if you CK? Shinso just stared in some horrified awe at the disaster that it was this exam. There was a redhead that, despite being taller than everyone, was getting pushed away by the sheer volume of firepower. Also her, he really hoped sports clothes were doing her no favors. Too tight. Then there was some boy that seemed so shy that he didn't seem to belong here, only for him to turn into some sort of hybrid between a bear with rabbit legs and a turtle shell and started to go ham around, swatting mechs around while the shell provided him protection from his blind spot. It wasn't enough, there were simply too many. And here he was, he had hit some, even took one out. If by took mean he panicked and basically tackled a 1-pointer that tried to attack him and began to pummel its head until it caved in while screaming bloody murder. At least he had a point. Ducking around, one of the shots of the 2-pointers hit a stop sign, this one falling on his feet, considering that he split his knuckles after punching metal, brittle as it was, and it hurt. He took it as a sign. So he picked it up. Was oddly light. Then it happened. Looking up as he lifted the sign, he saw the green-haired idiot reach to the sky with his left hand, and this one shot, dark energy that attached itself to one of the walls, hoisting him onward and upwards with ease, and aimed at the largest concentration of mechs in the area. Then he seemed to gather lighting on his body. The air felt overcharged, despite the idiot being far. Then he let himself fall, right in the middle of the mech formation, and then all the concentrated energy on his hands was released by him in a slam. His hair stood up more than usual. Then again it should after a fucking lightning bolt basically turned all the mechs in the area into nothing. No, really, nothing, not even slag was left. Then he saw him, floating and coated in the same energy the lighting he let loose. and as he raised his hands, he realized his plan. That Sonova is gonna poach all the points. Technically wrong, as he would later learn, but that didn't take on the fact he saw the green-haired idiot vaporize everything that crossed his path like a discount Sith Lord. But it wasn't enough. Despite the fact he and every other participant saw him destroy more robots than needed to pass, the sheer amount of mechs was just too much, so much so that at one point he saw the 3-pointers begin swarming him while the 1- and 2-pointers moved freely to engage the other students. He was kinda glad for the programming and slowly realized that this number of robots was the number of robots you are usually released on the participants before the gas attacks. Then once more something occurred. Now he felt the heat. It was far, and the amount of metal, friction, and bodies made him believe this was the kind of heat that generated on full stadiums, people screaming and jumping. It wasn't until a bright flash made him look again towards the agglomeration of 3-pointers. Melting 3-pointers. He looked in horror as the mechs melted as if they were made up of wax. More 3-pointers tried to smother the source of the heat, only to melt the same way. And in the middle of this, the green-haired idiot. Shinso at that moment felt a rush of emotions. Most of them are negative. Blessed with such a quirk, his mind hissed as he suddenly turned, and in rage he swung the stop sign at a 2-pointer, decapitating it. No one would ever label him as a villain because of that flashy quirk. That's so fucking unfair. What is that? 13 asked in clear wonder but directed at Aizawa, the only person in the room with a moderate experience with Izuku's powers. Inferno. He uses his mitochondria. Yes, he does that and ignites the isotopes in the air and causes a radiation-free fission reaction, Aizawa explained with some hesitation, clearly remembering the first time Izuku explained to him the attacks he had under his sleeve. I beg your pardon, did you just say radiation-free fission reaction? Power Loader asked. Look, I don't know much of what he spoke, only that hex is fucking broken. I can't erase it, Eraserhead said with a grumble. Well, now that explained the new mech's Knuckle Duster said, although the way he decided to take on the 1-pointers was more akin to give everyone a breathing room. There are a lot of robots, the quirkless brawler spoke simply. Yeah, these numbers were designed for the deluge of participants before Nedzu spoke, seeing, just like everyone else, how Izuku took a chunk of the floor, seemed to absorb it, and then seemed to summon pieces of rock from somewhere and become a boulder that began to take one more 1-pointers and several 3-pointers that were following their programming. With what he is doing, the others are now being able to pick the slack and reducing the numbers further. Midnight said. How are we in the score? She asked out loud. The 300-point threshold was broken by Midoriya-san a minute ago. Currently he is sitting at 303, never mind 310, followed by Bakugo Katsuki with 300 points exactly. Then Kendo Itsuka with 297. Oh, never mind, she just took first place and has 329 and fourth place with Minoru Mineta. Okay, that is a surprise, Nedzu said, focusing the screen on a bunch of mechs that were being held by a purple gunk and were unable to move at all. Fifth place is one Tetsutetsu with 231 points and Kirishima Ahiro with 231 points as well, and both are racking points at the same rate. Nedzu actually scratched his head, then shook it. I say it's time, he spoke, looking at the screens with a small frown, tapping a button on his console. Okay everyone, prepare. The specials are dropping out now. You are next in 2 minutes, he said. But Sir Yagi spoke suddenly. The exam ends in 3 minutes. That means 2 minutes for them to defeat 3 highly capable mechs that were built to fight and kill Terminator dolls should the troop ever dare attack our school, Nedzu replied as he tapped a button. But don't worry, Yagi-san. They are on easy mode. That made Yagi worry even more. Who is that guy? Don't care, he just helped us. Okako just shook her head as she forced the remains of another robot into an advancing 3-pointer, each piece tearing the fragile machine apart. With a sigh and not knowing how many points she had, at all, she slowly began to float herself down, slightly panting. She no longer got sick, which was good. The bad, however, was that she wasn't used to her body, even after this long. True, she no longer hit things when she walks, and she no longer increases her gravity when she goes to bed, but spending half her life as a small girl just to suddenly become as tall as All Might and with muscles like Mako can lead to problems in coordination. Also moving around. She was exhausted because trying to move while floating around was kinda hard. She had to use the momentum of her attacks to ensure she goes where she wants, and sometimes get hit by something somewhere, mostly her stomach, to arrest her momentum. She had to think like an astronaut in zero-G when it comes to movement, and unlike them, the area where she had to do this had little to ensure she could do where she wanted without getting hurt. She was sure she would be bruised all over her midsection. I can always ask Izumi to heal me. She had to fight the blush forming on her cheeks. He was such a kind soul, also small. Granted, anyone at her side was small, but he was extra small, adorable, respected her and listened to her, helped her. He was the sensible guy that was meant to be husbando material. Also, it was kinda hot when he got all macho in fights, a huge contrast of things. Godmum was right, I have it bad, she thought as she saw him in boulder mode plowing around the mechs. Getting blasted of the rock and flying into a car, getting blasted into a car. Her train of thought derailed the moment she saw this happen, and without thinking it she was making her way towards his form. My Doria-kun? Okako asked as she kneeled at his side. He somehow embedded into the metal and pulled him off. She, as everyone in their group knew, he was tough, not Kirishima tough, but he was, in his words, a little harder to put down, as he could actually tank small caliber bullets. They didn't test it, and had a very aggressive healing factor that coupled with his light made him near unwoundable. Didn't mean he wasn't capable of not getting hurt. I am okay, Izuku answered as he shook himself. Malaka, what hit me? Punched right through a concrete ball, he hissed, looking at Okako for answers. He got them when he saw her eyes were wide as saucers. Maybe. You should ask that, she pointed out. Izuku turned to look at what Okako was pointing, and his breath caught on his throat. There it was, the stuff nightmares were made of, metallic body gleaming on the sound, footsteps that clanged and crunched the gravel underneath unforgiving feet, the metallic casing that hid the artificial muscle that was coiled for destruction, the arms that were designed to hurt, to maim, the chest that hid a dangerous weapon and the head, fashioned to emulate a knight, ponytail, and all that. Still, no stilling could change the fact it had red eyes set on a glare. Aimed at Izuku. What is that? Okako asked. When Izuku answered, it was with actual fear. Fear she didn't know was instigated by years of being on the receiving end of its attacks on PvP and its origin. Fulgor, he whispered, standing up, arc light arching on his fists and his siren arms deploying, all charged with arc light. What in God's name was Yue thinking in making Fulgor? Izuku asked aloud, his voice shaking the area a little. Then he gulped when from out of the upper arms of the machine, two curved blades that arched with energy emerged, making Izuku more on edge than ever. Okay, that's not good, Okako said, turning to see if she could get some help, as experience has taught her. Something that makes the walking warhead twitchy mustn't be good, so better get help. Then of course she saw them. Many of the fragile mechs were down, so the main group had been able to take a breather until these two robots appeared. They looked normal looking. They had black pants with shin guards and knee pads. The torso was heavily covered in what seemed to be a full torso armor that looked like a vest used in paintball, but in blue. The arms were armored and also sporting the same cloth, that was the pants and the head. The head was armored, seemed to have an armored mouth guard made like a beak, and the eyes were barely visible, only slits were visible. Thing was, there were two of those robots painted blue and sporting the UA logo in the chest. Oh fuck me sideways, Okako cursed. Her curse caught Izuku's attention, so he turned and stared in somewhat horror at what he was seeing. Are you for real? Cyber ninjas? Excuse me, what? Why on God's green earth he knows those things? Knuckle Duster asked. And what the fuck are those things on his back? Well, they are called arms, recovery girl sassed as she stood up and made her way to prepare for the influx of wounded students. Gonna prepare the drones for the end of the exam. You lot simply don't know the meaning of restrain, she said as she passed Nedzu. He called that thing Fulgor. He knows where they come from, she whispered to Nedzu. Of course he does. He fought the troop, was all the principal answered as recovery girl went away to prepare for the sudden influx of wounded. Then he turned his attention to the screen and how the teens reacted to the appearance of the new mechs. This was a test in all senses, not only for the new generation but for the defenses of UA. Nedzu held no illusions that their enemies, both known and unknown, would simply wait out for them to be ready. Melissa actually was gaping, staring at the two freaking Mortal Kombat cyber ninjas that appeared out of the freaking nowhere. Is this what Izuku felt when he fought two nemesis? Dread and a WTF moment. She thought as she shook her head and prepared herself to defend herself. The palms of her hands hurt for all the slapping and flaying she had been doing to the other mechs, outlining a small flaw on Siva she would have to work around. As if I didn't have enough problems, she thought bitterly as she turned a little and looked for Izuku. In all honesty, she held no hope that any of them could fight these things in the state they were, currently exhausted and sore. But Izuku could buy them some time to regroup and actually fight back with a plan, provided anyone wanted to work together. Her eyes darted around, looking for green hair. She found one, but it was a floating head currently chomping the head of a three-pointer with elongated jaws. Looking more, she spotted him. Is that fucking Fulgor? She asked. Her world shifted its axis. She didn't know what had happened, only that the world was upside down and she was suddenly flying in BAAMMM. There it comes, the pain. A groan escaped her lips as her back impacted something hard. Then her head felt the pain as well. Blinking, Melissa realized that she was upside down, had crashed onto something hard, and had landed on her head. Thankfully, Siva had hardened the impact zone and ensured she didn't receive much pain. With a glance, she saw that the first cyber ninja had been the reason for her sudden flight, arm raised and kneeling. This thing had tossed her like a doll, surely grabbed her by the ankle. Okay, she is mad now. Twisting herself, she planted her hands on the ground and launched herself at the cyber ninja BBOOMMM. Only to stop when Bakugu emerged out of the blue and blasted the thing, only to be blindsided by the second cyber ninja that landed a cheap hit on his sides. A boy with black hair and shark-like teeth, Kirishima, as she was correct, actually roared as he launched himself at the mechs, seeing an opening, skin taking a jagged look and, growing, teeth getting sharper and face becoming somewhat elongated, reminding her of a shark's snot. His first sweep didn't even land. The cyber ninja simply tilted its body to one side, and the second cyber ninja punished the attack with a sudden kick to Kirishima's exposed jaw, jettisoning off his feet. Then the pink girl, Eshido, rushed with a yell, her tail poised to stab, only to be grabbed by the second cyber ninja and flung to a wall where she crashed with a scream. But she didn't have much time to do anything as the cyber ninja's chest opened and expelled something. Melissa's eyes widened when she saw what it was. Ionized meshes, she thought. It was a pretty way to say taser net. One Eshido experimented in full as it touched her and kept her locked in place. As more students began to attack and fail, Melissa began to panic. Truth to be told, everyone was, no one expected to be tossed into the wolves and survive. But the world was like that, the first day of life, right into the frying pan. Eyes darting around, Melissa clenched her fists. With a huff, she brought her S-watch and tinkered with it. This is gonna hurt, she hissed as she set herself in a runner start. Her watch flashed 5%. Immediately her muscles were empowered, wisps of blue energy emanating from her exposed skin, eyes gaining a small glow. One for All had so much energy that using it in a single limb was stupid. This she realized the first time she and Izuku talked about the quirk back in Island, and that the only way to use the quirk without ending like a pile of gore was to smoothly distribute all the energy across the body. The problem was that the body had to be able to handle such an increase of energy. Everything had to be able to, organs included, and trying to handle the 100% force of One for All from the get-go was suicide. Because she did not know how to operate a quirk, because she had spent the last 12 years of her life as quirkless, it went double for her. Thankfully, she had a theory she could work on. She also had Siva. Siva permitted her to control the quirk better, not an elegant solution compared to what Uncle Might wanted, but when she pointed out she might end up blowing her, everything he quieted down, and then told her it was a risk he knew, which cemented her use of One for All through Siva. At the state she was body-wise, she could handle 2% without issues. 3% was like a nice exercise followed by playing a soccer game, non-stop. 4 and 5% was akin to stretching her muscles and bones. Bones can't stretch, so it felt weird and kinda painful, not in the shatter kind of painful, just strange and something she didn't want to feel. She had a theory that because her body wasn't used yet to this output, this was why her body felt weird. She only had to train her body to ensure it could handle the pressure. Right now, however, drastic actions were demanded. So she waited, eyes darting as the fight carried on, tension building. Then when she saw it, one of the cyber ninjas was farther than the other while fighting a girl with red hair and really, really large arms, trying to keep it away. With that, Melissa moved. A blur of blue energy that looked like mist past some unprepared participants, unable to discern what had passed them. As for one Itsuka Kendo, she was panting, able to keep the mech away of its partner and keep attacking everyone with double-team attacks, but it had marked her as a tar BAMM. Then a blur of blue hit the mech on the side, bending metal with ease. It wasn't until the blur was visible was that Itsuka realized who had done it. The blonde girl with glasses, shoulder-checking the mech, who grabbed the mech while in the tackle and ran with it to a wall. There it rammed it into the wall. There Itsuka saw how the girl raised her energized fists and began to pummel the robot with vicious speed. Also, she was hurting her knuckles. Well, looks like one of the mechs is out, Nedzu mentioned, seeing the status screen of the first cyber ninja and how it showed catastrophic failure on the torso and head. Lasted more than expected, a minute. Power Loader wondered. Against those numbers and with the AI put in easy yes, had it been on a harder combat setting the story would be decayer looks like the other mech went down, Nedzu said. Minute and 12 seconds, he said as he saw the last feed of the second cyber ninja. One of one Koji Koda, transformed into what could be generously called a chimera, swinging towards the head of the mech after it was immobilized by a combination of Minoru's Mineta's new quirk and Kojiro Bondo's own new quirk, both highly adhesive and potent enough to stop a tank. How about this, Fulgore? Present MIC asked. Have to admit. Metal name, still operational. The support course outdid themselves. It has survived more than any T-doll that had confronted Midoriya-san before, Nedzu complimented. But it won't be enough, but it has done its job admirably. You set that thing to fail, Knuckle Duster said. No, His Purple Highness said, a serious look on his face. He set it to stall. The 0-pointers are going to finish this exam and show us the metal of the new generation, His Purple Highness explained. For good or for ill, Izuku kept attacking, but Fulgore kept blocking. I got 6 arms and I can't land a clean hit, he thought with a grimace as one of his siren arms got blocked by Fulgore, who proceeded to bend the arm by the elbow, causing it to dispel, making Izuku curse. A weakness he never encountered before because most times he encountered things that had no skill to fight, just to kill like rabid animals, and the very few T-dolls he fought he tended to destroy even before they could mount a proper defense or offense. Fulgore was different. Ever since the fight began it had tactically attacked weak spots he didn't know he had, kinks in his armor, that it was exploited with impunity. It was making him desperate. The worst part is that he knew of this, and it made him more desperate not finding a proper way to assess the situation and regroup. He needed help. A harsh blow to the gut lifted him up, only for a cruel hand to grip his head and ram him back first into the side of a car, gasping for air by the sudden impact. Help, he gasped as he fell to the ground, trying to stand UBAMM. A piece of concrete hit Fulgore on the side of the head, making it lose its footing. Don't touch him. And Izuku breathed a sigh of relief when Uraraka came out of nowhere and slapped the machine, hard. Instantly Fulgore went to its knees as gravity claimed it and forced its full wrath on it. Uraraka wasn't satisfied by this, and instantly keened the machine on the head, and then began to pummel it on the face, but stopped after 5 hits, then regressing with horse kicking it in the face, all while it tried to stand up. The worst part, it was succeeding. We are tired. It has affected her quirk. As powerful it has become, it is still tied to her physical form, and yet he hissed as he forced himself to stand up. And yet never before he had felt this tired, maybe because it was a constant gauntlet of chaos and destruction, maybe because he was never attacked in such a way before. And yet someone, as tired as he was now, was giving her all to help him. With a growl, Izuku approached the downed Fulgore mech, even as this one was standing up, but as he was approaching, Fulgore lashed out to him, a fist ready to knock him out. Izuku easily activated blade mode and grabbed the fist with one hand. The Fulgore did it again, and again Izuku did the same. Holding the mech with both hands, Izuku gritted his teeth, knowing Uraraka was holding the mech with her gravity. He was going to show her what she did to him. The air around his cooled, arms grew cold and blue, a sheen of blue and steam that emitted of them as ice formed. Ice began spreading on Fulgore's trapped hands. Izuku growled as he let the ice take over, spread, make things brittle. It seemed Fulgore realized this as it tried to break out, but Izuku wasn't going to let it happen, not going to let it go away. He focused on his cryomancy powers, the cold spreading faster, not even close to being stasis. These were more dangerous. Actual ice, with all the dangers that came with it, for the target. Soon the ice had spread all over Fulgore's arms, reaching up the shoulders. There Izuku began to clench, began to flex. The gravity Uraraka-san was exerting on Fulgore made it kneel, unable to fight back against Izuku, who had finally found his footing. Then with a growl, Izuku shouted, "FUS," the concussive force causing the ice around Fulgore's arm to break. Thing was, the ice had enveloped everything, in and out. As a result, the arms shattered like glass, leaving 2 stumps that used to be shoulders attached to Fulgore's shoulder as it stumbled by the concussive force of unrelenting force. Then Izuku actually blinked when the head of Fulgore suddenly was embedded into a nearby wall. Looking to his right he saw Okuko, huffing for air, hand extended in a slap, and aimed at Fulgore. "Your quirk is kinda amazing, you know," Izuku said with a small smile. Okuko for her part actually huffed, cheeks puffing and eyes darting away of Izuku. "Thanks. Lost myself against it for a second there. Don't worry about it. That's what friends are, the FUCK," she cried out, stumbling back. Izuku actually was concerned by this until his vision was covered by cloth and spandex, emerging from his chest. Osha-BAMM. His curse was silenced by a very powerful kick to the face that made him stagger and propelled his attacker towards Okako, who could do nothing about the fist about to meet her gut. Puwe. Bam. Exhaustion. Aizawa mentioned aloud. It seems lack of experience against living opponents and actual punishment to his body finally made him exhausted, he muttered. How odd. Most of the time Yagi began. He had the initiative and the tactical advantage, knowing that going all out was the only chance he and his family had to survive. But here he is fighting mechs made by UA. His guard was lowered, he added. At least he knows not to vaporize his future classmates and upperclassmen. Midnight mentioned. How much energy that lighting he launched before was making, she asked Power Loader. I don't know, never before lighting has been that powerful to cause a molecular breakdown, especially against metal, plastic and insulated materials, he added. Built to take on quirk users with electric quirks, and he vaporized all that. Let's just say I am glad he's on our side, and firmly aimed at anything but us, he mentioned. So 13's mention of him being a nuclear warhead wasn't so off. His Purple Highness and Knuckleduster both looked at present MIC as if he had grown another head. Immune to your erasure and basically capable of taking on multiple roles, MIC supplied with a nod of his head. A one-man band. He needs experience, Gran Torino reminded. All of them do. This exam proves they need to relearn many things they took for granted. That gas messed their quirks and are using them as if they were in their original forms. And you gathered this while the big three of UA beat over 100 exhausted would-be students in under a minute, 13 snarked. Now I see why you taught only 1 year, she added. Bold words from someone at kicking distance. Bold words to someone with black holes in her fingertips was the answer. Okay, you two, play nice, Nedzu replied as he pushed a button, and immediately a klaxon boomed over the training area and the fallen and beaten kids, indicating the end of the exams. Instantly the 3 best students, the ones to be better than pros, stopped their assault on the weakened would-be students, the majority collapsing there and there of exhaustion. Still don't get it, Knuckleduster muttered with a frown. From what I heard last time, it was executor class mechs that made the 0 points, and the reason behind it was to teach the kids that sometimes you have to turn tail to regroup. There are obstacles you can't take on your own, no matter how strong you are, he said. But this was more like a beat down than anything else. You don't get it, Yagi began. But I do, he said, seeing on the screens how Izuku helped Okako up, making their way towards a large group, placing her on the ground, and then placing his Well of Dawn on the ground. The 0-pointer original goal was to be an obstacle, to show the students the impossibility of the obstacle and move away of it. Fighting it was pointless. At least that was the theory, Yagi muttered with a small smile. It wasn't until one participant destroyed his 0-pointer that view was challenged. When asked why he did it, he said that it was escapable until it began attacking others. Then it became a target to take down, Yagi pointed out. 4 years Nedzu took on. That has been the test for some. The 0-pointer provides no points, but causes mayhem and damage untold, clipping others. Then it becomes another test. How will they react, Knuckleduster stated. No hero worth their salt will sit and wait in an event of a catastrophe. We move, he replied simply. The troop attack showed us that things change, evolve, and if we don't change we run the risk of getting left behind, Nedzu replied. That's why we employed the best third years as the 0-pointers and the deployment of the cyber ninjas and Fulgor as both a test of our newest defense lines and how the children will react to new threats, Nedzu replied. So, are those things really ninjas? Present MIC asked. Yep, smoke bombs, kunai and shurikens, camouflage, the works. Again the support department outdid themselves with them and Fulgor. They will become a perfect addition for training and defense. Eraserhead asked. Between everything that has happened I doubt anyone would want to attack us, especially with our beefed-up defenses. So did I, Nedzu replied, eyes narrowed. But if something I have learned from the past year is that to expect the unexpected, darkness. That was what his everyday. Darkness. Ever since All Might, his everyday has been darkness. Without his quirks he would be unable to see, to speak, to even breathe. His quirks kept him alive, but they also hurt him. Dr. Garaki's quirk, a gift he gave him without even asking, double the life but with the secondary effect of a weak body. Sometimes he mutters on his mind that is the reason All Might won that fight. But that matters little now. Today his long-winded plan comes to a new height as he received confirmation. UA was moving with their plans. Holding the exam so early had caught him off guard, barely time to prepare. But he was able to scrape something. UA was the center of heroics in Japan. Some of the best heroes had come of its walls. Some of the best quirks had been honed in its halls. Honestly, it would be a waste not to prepare for the future. When he recovers what's his by right. One for all, and his foolish brother. This time he would beat him into submission and make him see reason. Chapter end notes. So, chapters 336 and 337, we have a traitor, and now that I look in retrospect, it makes sense. Overall, Horikoshi made an excellent job of hiding it and making us think it was all a red herring when in reality it wasn't. He just didn't put the spotlight in him until it was appropriate. Also, I apologize in advance for what I consider a poor quality chapter. I am not in my five senses. I am miswriting a lot and that is starting to worry me. Yes, I am old, but not that old like what the fuck is going on. Hopefully, I might recover enough, might be a keyword here. If not, we'll see each other the next year, and hopefully with better times, if nothing crazy happens within the first 6 days. Again.